one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rena. Thank you. All right, our city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Gillio?
Here.
Vice Mayor Solario Luna?
Present.
Councilmember Friend?
Present.
Councilmember Clower?
Here.
City Manager Avera?
Present.
City Attorney Diaz?
Here.
Police Captain Reynoso?
Here. Perfect.
And the record will show Mayor Velasquez is absent.
Thank you. Can we have the verification of the agenda posting?
The agenda for the City of Hollister City Council meeting of February 20th, 2018 was posted on the bulletin board on February 16th, 2018 at 9:34 a.m. per Government Code Section 54954.2.
Thank you. Our city attorney reporting on closed session.
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor. There were 3 items in closed session. The first item that the City Council met on was threat to public services or facilities, Government Code Section 54957, consultation with the City Manager, City Attorney, and the Chief of Police. No action was taken on this item.
Thank you.
With regards to item number 2, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is listed as 211 5th Street, Hollister, California, 95023. And this involved negotiating parties, being the City of Hollister, via and through the agency negotiator, City Manager Avera. The owners of the subject property are Anne Marie Barragan Burns and Jason Noble. This was a matter relating to instructions to be given to the agency's negotiator to negotiate a certain lease. Direction was given by unanimous consent on this item, and the city manager was instructed to pursue further negotiations for a lease of the subject property, as well as to look into other lease options for the city at this time. With regards to item number 3, that matter was conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure pursuant to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection B. There's one potential case, that's the 400 block referendum, and no action was taken on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our agenda, to the consent resolution agenda. Are there any items that City Council would like to pull?
Yes, ma'am. A11, please.
A11?
A6.
A6? Any other? Okay, I would like to pull A3, A9, and A10. I have a motion on approval of the rest of the ones that were not pulled.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed? Okay. Our city clerk, at this time, do we have anybody from the public that would like to pull any of these items?
I have no items being pulled by the public, Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll go on to A3. Somebody going to report on A3?
Was that you, madam?
Yeah. Any report from the city manager on A3?
Since everybody's walking right up to the podium, I'll do it. What do you have?
Well, my question was that on the last time that it was here before us, the question that I had was, what time would any of these beverages be served during the, at the cinema? We have a lot of children and families that attend to go see a movie on a weekend or in the evening, and and I have a major concern that alcohol would be sold, and these young people will be among the adults that are sitting there drinking the beer or wine, whatever it may be. Do you have the time frame?
No, I do not. And the the on-site beer and wine license, obviously ABC monitors it from just kind of a general perspective, but not necessarily. There's no restrictions on the license application or time. Just from my conversations with Ted, I'm not sure that he's set on any particular time. That was my latest conversation with him. I think they're just going to try to figure out when is the best time and what they can monitor the easiest. Again, ABC is the enforcing agency, and usually when you obtain an ABC license, making sure that they're comfortable and making sure that you get those renewed on an annual basis is very important to the operator. So that's going to be first and foremost on their mind, is making sure that they're complying with their rules. But I don't know exactly what theater or if there's actual separate times or 21 and over theater. Yes.
So we could possibly have Walt Disney films and people drinking there.
Yes, I was at a theater in Sacramento where I thought it was interesting too. You have theaters that have children in it at the same time. People were purchasing food and alcohol, so it's quite possible that you could actually have that. It's kind of like the bar versus the Chili's, scenario. That's kind of what Councilmember Luna and I were talking about this morning. Is that a Chili's is a family restaurant serving alcohol or beer, wine, and alcohol at the same table as children are sitting, but not necessarily the same thing as at a regular bar. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Well, I just think, they make movies that are supposed to be quote unquote wholesome family movies.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting there with your children and the guy next to you is
Being irresponsible.
pounding them down. I don't know. It just doesn't
That
sound.
was my concern.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions from anybody? No? All right. Is there a motion to approve A3? Yeah. There wasn't any public comment? No.
We have no
I'd
speaker
ask.
cards, Madam Vice Mayor.
Is there a motion to approve A3?
I'll move to approve item A3.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
No, nay?
Nay.
I'm nay.
Okay.
So, okay. All right. The next
A6.
consent item would be A6. Carrie?
Yes, this is a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign an application for a sustainable communities grant to fund complete street plans for Meridian Street, Memorial Drive, and Buena Vista Santa Ana Road. The transmittal does mention Lad Lane Southside Road, but we feel that in consultation with staff at Caltrans, it would be more competitive just to focus on a unified geographic area. They're very competitive. They need to touch on a lot of points. With this, we would envision, if it's successfully awarded, that we'd have a robust stakeholder group comprised of residents, the commercial property owners and businesses on Meridian Street, the agricultural property owners on the north sides of Buena Vista and Santa Ana. Everything would be bilingual. We've also have commitment from San Benito Reach to support the grant efforts we're working on a letter from Calaveras, but we have a letter from the principal at Gavilan Hills, the Dual Language Academy, to support. They wholeheartedly support this.
Do you have any idea how large the grant can be?
The cap is $500,000. This is just a planning grant, but it would identify strategies to convert these corridors to what are called complete streets. And so for those people that don't know, that's a road system that is usable by a person of any age or ability and mode of transportation, meaning you're walking, biking, driving in a car, you're in a truck, or taking a bus.
Did you say the cap The cap is
$500,000 for the
Would
plan.
that be what the city of Hollister would be applying for?
We're still pinpointing the amount. There's an 11.48% match, but some of that match can be with staff time.
Okay. Any other comment?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mary, is there a implementation grant that we can go after if we do get the planning grant?
Yeah, there's the active transportation grant funding cycles, and there's a funding cycle this year. We'll probably be trying to talk to you about that at the March meeting. If you recall, the city did receive an environmental justice transportation planning grant to do a complete streets plan for Tres Pinos, Sunny Slope, Nash Road, and McCrae Street. So we can go now forward to try and get funding for that grant. Because of SB1, the grant award amounts are higher than they have been in the past. And also because of that, for a smaller application, if it's under $1.5 million, there's no requirement for a match from the local agency. So we could apply to fund the restriping of Tres Pinos, Sunny Slope Road, some sections of McCrae Street that are already developed.
And what's the grant period for that? When would we hear back if we did apply?
The application would be due in July, and I think the grant award would be in the fall. But the funding wouldn't be for a couple years out. But if we position ourselves to be ready, more shovel ready, and sometimes something like striping and paint makes you a lot more shovel ready than having to do plans and specs for a roundabout or something like that. So then we could compete to try and get funding sooner.
Okay, it'd be nice if we could work on an application for that, because that plan has been done for about the entire time I've been on the council, 4 years. So, and it's not the best, not the safest corridor, and a lot of kids walk it. So it'd be nice to kind of get something going there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary.
Okay. Any other comments from City Council? Do we have any public comment?
There are no speaker cards, Madam
All
Vice
right.
Mayor.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we accept resolution 2018-31.
All right, motion. Do we have second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. The next one is A9, and that will be Fire Department.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. A9 is a program with the state that allows the Hollister Fire Department to participate in a statewide mutual aid program where, based on performance of the department and criteria that's met, that include training, strategy and tactics, and an annual physical agility test. If we meet all of these criteria, the state Cal OES Fire and Rescue chief will assign us a rig that they would deem necessary for this area. It could be a Type 3 wildland rig, a Type 1 structure rig, a water tender, or even a support rescue rig. What I'm asking for is council to give us authorization to submit for the application, and through an evaluation process to let us know probably in about 3 to 6 months, hopefully before the wildland season.
So are we looking for a wildland truck or something?
I am, because we have right now in our fleet enough structure fire rigs, Type 1 rigs. When they realize that, when they do their assessment and evaluation and they realize we have one Type 3 rig and it's antiquated, they more than likely are going to deem us a probability of getting a Type 3.
This is not going to replace the one that came from San Juan.
No, it isn't. So the unique thing about it is that anytime any of our rigs go down for service, we can use that rig in its place. It's not going to be a first out engine, but what it will do is for a large scale incident, we'll be able to deploy it. If we're exhausted, say we've got about 3 or 4 incidents at one time, we could do a callback, put people on that rig, and it can deploy. say the city of Salinas, who's also a participant in this program, if their OES rig goes down, we can provide support to them, and they can reciprocate that service also. It was the history about it is that it was established in 1952, and all of the states of the union at that time participated in it, all 48 states. Right now, we're the last state to participate in it, and it's self-generated. Back then, the federal government purchased these fire engines. To this date, the state of California purchases its own, and the mutual aid program comes in play. So last year, we got deployed on a OES campaign fire. We were out there for about 14 days, and we used our own rig. Any maintenance or damages caused on that scene, we had to flip the bill. But with this program, any kind of maintenances or any kind of repair on that vehicle is getting shouldered by the state. Now, their program is very unique to where any damages occurring or any repairs occurring on a piece of apparatus over $100, they will pay for. Anything $100 and below, we pay for.
And that was my question to you. Is there any additional cost to the city in doing this, or any even cost that could be reimbursable?
Well, whenever we deploy this apparatus on an incident, we will get paid for staff hours, including the overtime, and a 10% administration fee supporting the troops that are out in the field. As far as maintenance is concerned, like I said, it's only going to cost about $100 for repair on any repair. So we're talking about fan belts, light bulbs. I estimated as a fiscal impact about $1,200, $100 a month at the very most. And I don't foresee it getting any more than that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, City Council? All right. Do we have any questions from the public? No? All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move that we approve resolution 2018-34.
All right. Second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. And we go on to A10.
Good evening, Madam Vice Mayor, council members. The item before you under consideration is to execute another 5-year on-call engineering contract with Kimley Horn Company. The FAA has a program where they will reimburse 90% of the engineering costs for the airport improvement projects. So 5 years ago, we went through their process and we selected Kimley Horn to aid us through their stuff. They helped us receive over $12 million in grants during that 5-year period. Their 5 years are up, so we had to re-advertise and go through the process again. Kimley Horn responded to the advertising, and they were the only applicant. So our recommendation is to select them yet again for another 5-year period. And currently we're programmed for about $5 million over the next 3 years.
Okay. And this corporation, where are they from?
They have an office in Salinas and San Jose. They're an international corporation. I don't know where they're headquartered at. Our particular managers staffed in LA.
Okay. All right. Any questions, City Council? Any public? No question. All right. No motion to anybody?
So moved.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion's carried. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. A11.
A11 is also me. A11 is the project to repair the paving deficiencies on the main runway out of the airport. This is a time-sensitive project. We're trying to get it taken care of before CAL FIRE returns. Every day it does not rain brings CAL FIRE back that much sooner. So I'm expecting them back at the beginning of May. Currently, we do not have FAA approval for this project yet. So I would ask that any motion that gets made, if you choose to make one, would include the words, if the FAA approves. I spoke with the FAA this afternoon. They're anticipating approving this within the next 3 days. They're not seeing anything that's going to derail anything. This project is out of the ordinary because, as you recall, this was awarded to a different company. They had performance issues, so we are now having to re-award it to a separate company, which is not a frequent occurrence in our program, so there's a little extra scrutiny on it.
Okay, so actually it's pending FFA.
It is pending FAA approval,
FFA.
expected by the end of the week.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, I'm sorry, that was the reason I wanted to pull this, Mike, was to ensure that that we do have the FAA approval, so we don't go out and do something that's not FAA approved and waste a whole bunch of cash. So I'll make a motion, sorry.
Darren, you comment?
I have one question.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I guess it's more for the city attorney than Mike. Are we going to recuperate any of this money because we're only doing this because the previous contractor did not uphold his end of this contract?
That's correct. That matter is currently pending in litigation with the State Arbitration Board, and I'll be reporting on that matter further in detail in closed session at the next regular meeting.
So it's possible we'll get some relief on this cost.
That's correct.
Currently, we're only fronting 30% of the cost. 70% of it's still being paid for by the FAA through the grant, which is why we're waiting for their approval.
I understand, but I just wanted everybody to know we're not happy with what happened out there, and we're taking them to court. So this could be paid for by that court action.
Understand?
Okay. Any other comments? No? Do we have any public comment? All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that pending FAA approval, we approve sorry, I'm looking for the number. Had a little computer problems here and it's not cooperating with me. 2018-36 pending FAA approval.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. All right. At this time, we will open up our city council meeting for public input. Anyone in the audience can speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to our city clerk before speaking. And when the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium and state your name for the record. And each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, with a maximum of 30 minutes if people are speaking on the same subject. Please note that state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on any item that is not on this agenda. So, do we have any speakers?
Yes, we do, Madam Vice Mayor. Natalie Day and Kevin Barcelos.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Vice Mayor and gentlemen. My name is Natalie Day, and I've lived in Hollister for over 20 years. I'm here today to request that the city fund a low or no-cost spay-neuter program to humanely address the ever-increasing number of feral and stray cats in Hollister. I'm part of a network of volunteers who have joined together to share resources to humanely help the animals in need in Hollister. Most residents reaching out to us are adamantly against sending their stray neighborhood cats to the Hollister Animal Shelter, where the grand jury reported that over 1,000 cats were killed in 2016, euthanized. 138 of the animals euthanized were kittens. This breaks down to 5 cats or kittens being euthanized every day that the shelter is open. 5 cats or kittens every day. In fact, records show that Hollister's nearly 50% euthanasia rate is higher than our 2 neighboring animal shelters. We use personal time, finances, energy, and space in our homes to trap, spay, or neuter, socialize, and obtain veterinary care to help humanely control the feral stray cat population. Since 2015, our group of more than 25 volunteers has helped to spay or neuter over 600 feral and stray cats and kittens. If you consider that every female cat is capable of having 2 to 3 litters a year at 3 to 5 kittens per litter, the math speaks to how much our group has done to prevent literally thousands of unwanted cats from being born, suffering, and eventually euthanized. As hard as we have worked, our numbers represent a fraction of the animals still out there needing help. Our group has collectively spent more than $50,000 on this compassionate, time-consuming endeavor. I love helping these animals, but please see this is not a long-term solution for any of us. The city does not expect the residents to fill their own potholes or repave their own streets, nor should we be expected to shoulder the financial and emotional burden of humanely managing the feral and stray cat population. In closing, it's obvious that until a low or no-cost spay-neuter service is available to residents, this is a losing battle. But with the assistance of the City of Hollister funding those services, the efforts of our group could be doubled or tripled and make a much larger impact for the community and the animals within it. Coupled with a trap, neuter, and release program, the immediate fiscal benefits to the city, the reduction of the cats and kittens entering the shelter, and the improvement of the lives of the existing animals is a necessary and obtainable reality. Hollister is a beautiful, friendly community and is lucky enough to still have that small town charm. With cats and kittens needlessly dying in a community that respects and protects animals, we are left feeling that the city is not currently representing our values. Thank you, ma'am, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Barcelos, and we've lived in Hollister for the last 8 years. Some of you might know me and my wife, Kim, from our involvement with the Hollister Animal Lost and Found Facebook group, which is currently 3,500 members. Whether it's rallying to locate a lost dog, rushing a critically sick stray cat to the vet, or even helping a grieving family with cremation expenses, we see every day that our community places a very high value on the welfare of its animals and their families. The reason I'm here tonight is that on any available metric, it's clear that the city's public policies are not aligned with the values I see every day. For instance, the percentage of animals that left the shelter alive in our 3 neighboring counties was between 74 and 93% in 2016. Our shelter, just 52% of the animals who came through the front door at the shelter left alive. 52%. Even I was shocked when reading the grand jury report at the scale of what is an obvious cat overpopulation problem that is swamping all efforts to deal with it. It's easy to blame the shelter, but by flooding their front door with animals, we give them no choice but to perform euthanasia just to keep up. At the same time, the volunteers that Natalie represents are close to their breaking point. They are preventing another tidal wave of animals at the shelter, but our community cannot and should not expect them to shoulder this burden on our behalf alone. The good news is that there's a practical solution that the council can put in place almost immediately. The common denominator in the policies of our neighboring communities is an effective low or no-cost spay-neuter program targeted at specific animal populations. These programs seek to lower the number of animals entering the shelter, which has a direct impact on euthanasia rates. The results of these programs have been dramatic. Santa Cruz County was able to reduce total cat intakes by 68% between 2012 and 2016, while Chowchilla in the Central Valley went from almost 200 feral cat intakes to 8 in the same time period. There are many similar data points, and we can replicate all of those here. Spay-neuter programs are by far the most effective policy for reducing the number of animals who enter the shelter, and the only real alternative to our unofficial trap and kill policy that has consistently resulted in 5 cat euthanasias every single day, with no hope for improvement. And this is not a choice between our values and a cost-effective solution. Indeed, with a proper program in place, it will cost roughly the same to spay or neuter an animal as it does to euthanize it. I can think of nothing more in line with our values than investing in the former so that we can reduce the latter. So tonight I join Natalie and other members of the community who are here in support and asking the council to convene a special meeting to discuss funding an effective spay-neuter program in partnership with our existing volunteer organizations. I would ask everyone in attendance who supports this request to please stand. I thank you for your time and consideration. We can do this and we must do this.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Do we have another
Devon
speakers?
Casada.
Hello, everybody. My name is Devon, and I'm an artist from San Bernardino County, Hollister, California. And I just want to say real quick, drivers, start your engines! Because that's what we are, right? We're all drivers for a difference. I got a little solution, Natalie, for your problem right there. Why don't we build something for the community in general, for the color, dance, and art that's in the community already? And why can't we do other things like that, support things? Because we can do it in one of these empty buildings that are downtown and come together as a community. I don't know. That doesn't seem to be a problem. Or why can't we acquire the big nursery before that was there, where the lady needed some help and she couldn't get it? But there's a beautiful woman that runs a community garden up there that she could branch down and make a bigger one downtown, right there in the center, making it innovative and different, and also helping the homeless problem either with giving them employment. And also those that come to detention centers, give them employment as well. Because we have a shelter, but no programs. So you could come to the shelter and hang out, but you're going to go back to the same thing. Where's the difference in that? They need a program to go to. They need something of a stepping stone to make a difference. And that's what we are about. A different community. A place of difference. I'm not going to sit up here and make a disturbance and say all the things that are nonsense that not the council, the council, we need fresh new 8 of them with a contest of 7 for the youth between the 6th and the 12th grade to get the youth connected with the politics of what's going on with the community now. That's what has to happen. The fire is in the eyes. I could see it in yours, Mr. Clower, for real, of a difference. I know you want it, and some do, but some just, it's okay. Look at our rec center. Just look at it, a place of retirement. It looks like a soup kitchen. There's not even a garden for them. They look outside to the kickback and together. It looks like they're waiting at a bus stop. What is going on here? That's disturbing. That is rude, actually, to have somebody go there from retirement. Hey, you worked all these years in Hollister. Here, go back and kick back here where the lady's pushing plastic trays that they eat out of. Are you serious? We acquire the 400 block and make a 5 all-glass thing we call a rec center. And that is their super leisure time. They use that building for that because they're on retirement, so they need super leisure, right? I agree with that because I agree with difference. And that's what I'm here to express today. And I'm so glad that people are standing up now and expressing themselves to a community that is here to listen. I'm surrounded by brilliance. I'm not saying nobody isn't because I'm surrounded by it. It flows through our youth as well. And we need to bring them in a council and have a bigger place of meeting. How can we have such a small place? There's thousands of us that live here. We need to be in a place that's comfortable when we walk in. And it doesn't matter if it's just one person comes. At least you have the comfortability of walking in and being, wow, I know that this building gets full sometimes with the members of my community. A difference that we are here to do. And I'm a driver for it. And I see it all around me. Every time I walk around the streets or do what I do, I see difference and brilliance. It's all in us. Just remember to start your engine because we are all drivers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Richmond?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, Marty Richmond from Hollister. Just so you know, when I was young, I was known for my loud voice. No contest, this gentleman's got a louder voice than I ever had. There's been a lot of talk at the. I try to attend the meetings over at the county, and there's been a lot of talk about the roads and road repair and what roads are going to get fixed and what we're going to do. And they tend to promise everything to everybody. Well, we can't have that because there isn't going to be enough money to give everybody or everything. I hope they don't forget that over 60% of the population of the county lives in one city, and that's here. And we do share one thing together, and that is the roads we use to access the state highways, as bad as they are. We all know that problem. But the access roads, and that's basically comes out to Buena Vista, Fairview, and Union Road are the 3 main. There are some more, but those are the 3 main roads that don't include the bypass to get on 25 because the bypass we did build ourselves, even though it took 30 years, I think, something like 30 years. So when you guys start fighting about what to fix, if you do ever get any money out of this deal, I want to encourage you at that time to stand up and say, look, we've got to fix the access roads because that's what most people use. I agree. It may not be fair to somebody who lives in South County that's got a lot of potholes. It may not be fair to somebody who lives here and has got the concrete streets that are all disrupted because of the earthquake issues and potholes, and we know we have all that. But if we can't get to the state roads, we're never going to get out of here, and we're never going to get back. And we still have more than 50% of the people who are working, and that does not include me, I'm retired, but we still have more than 50% of them, according to COG, our own figures, that commute. And, that's a terrible strain on somebody to have to leave 4 o'clock in the morning. And I hear the cars start and the motorcycles start, people warming up and getting ready to go. And then the worst strain is to come back after a full day's work, driving there, and come back at night and to crawl along Highway 25 and try to get into Hollister. We will not be able to fix Highway 25. I know people talk about it a lot, but let me tell you what, that's a lot of money. But even if we got the state to do it, it wouldn't do any good if we didn't have good access roads. So I encourage you to stand up and demand that they fix the access roads first, so that we can all get in and out of town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other?
There are no
speakers?
more speakers.
No other
Madam
speakers?
Vice Mayor?
All right.
Billy, could we, there was talk about scheduling a special meeting with the issue about the dog pound. Can we get some, if we do that, can we get some figures on what it really costs to run a spade and neuter camp like that? If the city was to do it, what is it going to cost?
Absolutely. We can do that for you.
And then
Would that be a special meeting or a study session, or?
Well,
So that we can
there's a
get
couple
some
of things.
figures?
I think there's some issues. There's some issues that we're dealing with the county and the city in regards to the overall animal control contract. I don't think unless that's kind of what we can do. We can do that at a special study session, or we can actually just do it at a regular meeting, and we can have animal control provide you a report. It's all on how in depth you want to get and how long you want to spend on the particular issue. I think it could be a lengthy discussion, so certainly a study session at some point would not be the worst thing.
Yeah.
I just think, despite what happened with the county contract, I think maybe the city should be able to do something about that.
Oh, sure.
I'm not sure we can do all of it or what they want, but
So.
we might be able to find some partners that help us.
Yeah. So what we
can
could do is
recommend a study session?
yeah, we can plan for a study session maybe in March and get that together.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
I know Councilman Clower has been asking for a spade and neuter sort of area for quite some time, and I think that Carlos and Lieutenant Olson, who's running the shelter now for the PD, they've had some various ideas. So maybe this is a perfect time to ferret those out.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to item D, city manager's report.
I was just going to sort of mention what we just talked about, and that I have more for my later report. So nothing right now.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So we're moving on to E, public hearing. And
Take 5 minutes in case some people want to leave.
I think we're going to take about 5-minute break right now, so that if anybody wants to leave at this time, or you're welcome to stay. Next will be our public hearings. Okay?
Thank you.
City Council. This item is regarding the city's municipal code.
Okay, can you please shut the door?
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hold on.
Okay, this item is regarding the city's municipal code related to speed limits. To provide you guys with a brief background, the last time that the city approved an amendment to the speed limit regulations was in July 2012. The approved speed limits were based on an engineering and traffic survey, and it enabled the Hollister Police Department to utilize radar to enforce the speed limits. State law requires that engineering and traffic surveys for speed limits should be conducted generally about every 5 years, and they can be extended to 7 or 10 years, depending based on certain criteria. On September 5th, 2017, the City Council approved a professional services agreement with TJKM Transportation Consultants to conduct the necessary engineering and traffic survey as required by state code to enable the Hollister Police Department to utilize radar to enforce speed limits. That survey is now complete and presented to the Council for consideration. To provide the City Council with a more detailed discussion and opportunity to ask questions for clarifications related to the survey, Mr. Chris Kinzel will be providing the City Council with a presentation on this matter.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed working with your staff on this speed zone update, and as was indicated, it's a requirement of the California Vehicle Code in order to enforce speed limits with radar to update, review, and make adjustments as necessary at 5-year intervals. And I'm going to quickly go through to sort of summarize the study. These are two important vehicle code sections. Indicates what needs to be included in the in a speed zone survey: speeds, accident records, traffic conditions, roadside uses, that sort of thing. And there's also some requirements as to how, when we make our measurements, how we apply those in terms of rounding speeds, that sort of thing. These are the streets that we looked at. These are the existing speed limits in the city, color coded by the different speeds. And we looked at 60 different segments of streets within the community. We looked at arterials, collectors, and even some streets that are designated as locals. The things that we need to look at, gotta point this the right way, the key factors, the roadway conditions, geometrics, what's going on alongside the road, the zoning, what's the development, parking and bike traffic, pedestrian activity, are there a lot of driveways on that street? Traffic control, such as stop signs or signals. Is it rural, semi-rural, residential, what have you? Let's see. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, I have a little...
Are you trying to go backwards or forward?
I'm trying to go forward. Maybe I'll let you do that. Data collection. We look at we put hoses on the road and count the traffic on all the streets. We use radar to determine how fast the motorists are going at the present time, and we review the traffic collisions. Next slide. This is just a sample of a survey that we made on one street at one location. And the horizontal bars are the number of vehicles. The bars are 5, 10, 15. And in the each bar represents a different speed. So you can see there's a bunching of the speeds around a central point.
almost a classic bell curve here, close to it. And this is a big indication to us as to what is the appropriate speed. And then on the next slide, this is a summary of the traffic volumes that we make over a 24-hour period with 15-minute breakdowns, and use that to determine the general characteristics of that street. And when you add them all together on the next slide is the average daily traffic on streets throughout the community. I think your staff, engineering and otherwise, will be able to use this map for a variety of things. So we've prepared this map specifically so it would be useful for other reasons at City Hall. The recommended speeds on the next slide. I skipped the scene. Collision rates, preliminary recommendations, and driving all streets are the three steps that we take after we've got all the data collected. We calculate the rates, we compare them with the state. We prepare preliminary recommendations, what seems reasonable, and then we drive all the streets. This is the recommended speed limits on the streets in Hollister. It looks a little bit like the first map. There were some changes that we made. The changes that are shown on the next map, and that the ones that are in the red tones, red and orange, are those where the speed limit is recommended to decrease, to lower, and the green ones are the ones where it's recommended to increase. Most of the streets, as you can see, don't change. And then the final slide shows a requirement of the law is to have a registered engineer, such as myself, certify that the procedures we use and the results that we came up with are in compliance with the requirements of the California Vehicle Code. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on this presentation.
I would like to go back to the slide where the color charting.
Uh-huh.
And can you let us know what those colors indicate? I
Yes.
can imagine what the red is, but if you could just indicate
yes,
that.
that's the third from the last, right at the end.
And one more. That right
there. We go. So they're color-coded. The darkest number is 55. That's on San Felipe, the only road, I think, in town that are that way. The orange bars are 50-mile-an-hour limits. I know it's hard to see that, I think, from your vantage point. Yellow is 45. Red is 40. And then light green is 35, and the darker green is 30, and then there's the blue ones that are 25. Most of the 25 limits are prima facie at 25. We don't have to make any studies of them because they're either residential or business districts. So the ones that are 25 are the ones that might qualify for other speeds if we didn't do the surveys.
Okay.
Could you go to the next one that has the recommendations on it?
Mm-hmm.
The changes is this one, yes. So are there questions on this?
Well, on one of them, Santa Ana Road from Chapel out past the school, you're recommending that reduce it by 5 mile an hour. So it's a 25-mile zone. Are you going to reduce it down to 20?
No.
I'm not against either one. I'm just asking a question.
Santa Ana is recommended a decrease by 5, and there are different speed limits along Santa Ana. And let me find that.
Well, it's posted as 25 now, and I'm just wondering.
That's for school, I think.
The school's there.
Are you sure it's not 35?
Yeah, I believe it's 40 because in Santa Ana Chapel Road to the school on the other side of the Pinnacles National Highway is 40 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour in the school zone when children are present.
Well, the 25-mile-an-hour sign is right past the bypass, within 100 feet of the bypass. It
There's
slows
a
down to
small
25.
section of Santa Ana that's 35 miles an hour. That I think you might be recommending down to 30.
We are
The recommendation
recommending,
is to drop it all down to 5
25?
degrees, or 5 mile an hour.
we're recommending some
It'd be the Chapel Road to
25 and some 30 on that street.
Okay.
35.
And I noticed on the recommendation, you're going to increase the speed on Nash Road after San Benito Street.
On Nash Road,
It says increase by 5 mile an hour.
That's after you go past Rancho. It would be east of Rancho.
Yeah, that's that business district along there, where we've had several accidents in that turnout lane.
Are there any other questions from City Council? Do we have any speaker cards on this?
Excuse me, Councilman Friend, that portion of Santa Ana that you may be talking about from San Felipe Street to Chapel Road is 25 miles an hour, and it's going to stay 25 miles.
Right, right. But I mean, from Chapel Road, it looks like Chapel Road out to past the school, it's going to be 20 mile an hour, where it's 25 now. Well, I'm just going by the chart. It says reduce.
you know, it's probably confusing. One chart has Santa Ana in one color and the other one in another. And one of them is the speed limit and one of them is the adjustment in speed. And so the part we're adjusting is further to the east. It's the section where
On Santa
is-
Ana, it looks
is
like from,
40, and we're recommending
It looks like
35.
from Chapel East on Santa Ana, from Chapel East on Santa Ana is the 35 mile an hour. The dark green, that's 25 miles an hour, is from Chapel towards San Felipe.
Yes.
Okay, being there are no other comments from City Council, this is a public hearing. So at this time, we will open the public hearing. Do we have any speaker cards from the public?
We have no speaker cards, Madam Vice Mayor.
No speaker cards. We will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council level. Are there any further comments, additional comments from the City Council? If none,
I'd like to make a motion to read by title only, waive full reading, and introduce ordinance 1150.
all right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, it's moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay, motion carries. Thank you, Dan. All right, we'll move on to item E2. Okay. Abraham?
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Members of the City Council, good evening. There's also a PowerPoint for this as well. The item before you this evening is a request for the pre-zoning of a property. As you can see on the screen, the first reading of the property known as Roberts Ranch, the pre-zoning of a 53.35 acre site into from the county to the city limits, and it's pre-zoned for low density performance overlay zone and for open space. Most of the property, 50.81 acres, is going to be pre-zoned for low density residential performance overlay, which is up to 8 dwelling units per acre, and about 2.54 acres are being proposed for open space, and that's for the expansion of Valley View Park. And I'll get more in detail. I'll show a map and get more in detail in regards to the proposal as well. The project is actually located west of Ferry Road, east of Enterprise Road, and north of Airline Highway State Route 25. Additional entitlements being requested this evening is a tentative map for the project site. It's 53.35 acres plus an additional 2 parcels consisting of 1.55 acres close to Enterprise and Airline. So it's a total of 54.9 acres. And the request for the subdivision is to subdivide that into 206 lots, 192 of which would be for single-family residential and 14 for multifamily dwelling units. Out of the 14 lots for multifamily, 7 would be for triplex units and 7 would be for duplex units. In addition to the tentative map, the entitlements being sought for tonight is also a conditional use permit for a planned unit development. And the conditional use permit is for essentially is to allow for the multifamily component within the low density residential zoning district that this parcel is being pre-zoned for. In addition, the site and architectural review, that is essentially only for the multifamily component. The single-family residential component does not require a site and architectural review. Site and architectural is for the site layout of the multifamily component and elevations, setbacks, lot coverage, and that. And finally, the applicant is also seeking an environmental impact report approval along with mitigation monitoring and reporting program. So in summary, let me make sure that the next slide. The request tonight is threefold. It's for the adoption of an environmental impact report. It's for the first reading of the pre-zone that would pre-zone the property to low-density residential and open space for annexation, and for the subdivision of the property. So on the first sheet of your transmittal, essentially under the staff recommendation, the first one, Resolution 2018-37, is would approve the environmental impact report. As you know, the environmental impact report essentially analyzes the entire project as a whole, the entire 54.9 acres, and it identifies any type of significant impact that the project can cause to the community. And the mitigation monitoring and reporting program that you also have essentially explains any type of potential significant impact and how it would reduce it to less than significant. The only impact identified that is not being reduced to a less than significant impact is in the traffic category, and that is the requirement of expanding Highway 25 from San Felipe to 101 and Highway 156 from Union to the Alameda. That is, San Bernardino County Council of Governments is the lead agency for that. I know that there's been talks about expanding, and I know that there's an alternative route now being approved for Highway 25. However, the mitigation measure there is just that the applicant will pay its pro rata share of the improvements. But because it's not improved now, it's a significant impact now, and the project, even without the project. So that's the only one. And along with if the council desires to adopt the resolution for the environmental impact report, it's also a statement of overriding consideration indicating that is an unavoidable significant impact at this time. Approval of the environmental impact report does not constitute approval of the subdivision. I just want to be clear of that. That resolution 2018-37, if approved, does not mean that the subdivision would be approved. The subdivision requires a separate resolution. This next one, the first reading of the ordinance 1151, is essentially just for the pre-zoning of the 53.35 acre site to low density residential and to open space. The first reading, pending your approval, we will schedule a second reading for the March 5th City Council meeting, and pending your approval of the ordinance pre-zoning the property, the applicant, staff would send the application to the Local Agency Formation Commission for annexation approval. And I just want to be clear as well that approving the first reading of the ordinance tonight would not constitute approval of the project. This ordinance 1151 is specifically for the pre-zoning for annexation of the site. Finally, Resolution 38, 39, and 40, that would constitute approval of the subdivision and approval of the multifamily component of the subdivision. There is one condition on the tentative map that indicates that no improvements can be done on the site pending your approval until LAFCO annexes the property. So that is one stipulation. So that was just a quick summary of the entitlement that the applicant is seeking tonight. At the end, I will have the same slide for your review as well. The slide before you is the tentative map that's being requested for approval by the applicant. The project site encompasses an area of 54.9 acres within 3 parcels, the larger one being the one that is being considered for pre-zoning at 53.35 acres, and then there's 2 smaller parcels at Airline Highway and Enterprise Road. As you can see, and as mentioned, the site is located west of Fairbury Road, east of Enterprise Road, and north of Airline Highway. I've indicated some of the roads that are within the vicinity. The only hiccup there is where it says existing park is actually proposed. The slide doesn't reflect it accurately. The existing park is just to the west of that, which is the existing Valley View Park, also known as the Well Park. And the subdivision consists of 206 lots for a total of 227 residential units. There will be 192 single-family lots for single-family homes, and out of those 192 single-family lots for single-family homes, the majority of them would be standard single-family lots. 164 of them would meet the minimum requirements of the R1 low-density residential zoning district, basically indicating that the minimum lot size is 5,500 square feet, and they would meet. The majority of those lots, 164, would meet the single-family criteria. 28 of those lots that are adjacent to the existing Cielo Vista development to the west and to the north would have a requirement. There's a condition, and also in the tentative map shows that they're going to be no smaller than a quarter of an acre. So each lot would have to be no less than 10,890 square feet, as opposed to the standard single-family lot that's 5,500 square feet. Additional conditions would also be that just on those 28 lots adjacent to Cielo Vista, that the unit that's proposed on that site, pending your approval, cannot be taller than a single story. And also, our standard setback to the rear from the back of the home to the back rear property line, essentially to the back fence, as our standard is 15 feet, no less than 15 feet. In this particular case, the requirement would be that it's no less than 30 feet. And that's because the applicant, in working with the concerns of some of the concerns of the Cielo Vista development residents, wanted to make sure that it addressed some of the concerns regarding lot compatibility. Cielo Vista lots are approximately acre lots. In this case, the applicant for the tentative map would be able to put 5,500 square foot lots. However, they are trying to make them a little larger, at least to be able to blend in a little bit more with the existing Cielo Vista development. Regarding the 14 lots that are being requested for approval of multifamily, they're going to be more towards the northwest corner of the area near the proposed park. And they're going to be 14 lots. 7 are going to be triplex units, and 7 are going to be duplex units for a total of 35 multifamily units. The lot is being pre-zoned for R1. However, with the conditional use permit for a planned unit development, we can have multifamily units on the R1 zoning district. As you know, we have a certified housing element. It's been certified by City Council and it's been certified by the State Housing and Community Development. This was done last year around February of 2015. And in order for it to get certified, we had a lot of work went in behind this certification of the housing element. A lot of meetings with the public, a lot of meetings with the Planning Commission, a lot of meetings with City Council, joint City Council Planning Commission meetings. And one of the reasons why it was certified is because we documented all of the community needs, and also indicated that we had the resources and the land, and we were willing to work with agencies to meet our regional housing allocations provided by the state. One of the biggest needs that the community indicated, and that's documented in the report, is the need for rental housing. And when the project first came in for review, the zoning, the pre-zoning, or how it's designated in the general plan, is for low-density residential. However, after reviewing the proposal and after recognizing the community need, staff met with the applicant and requested that a component of the project be designated for multifamily housing to provide for that mixture. Currently, the city is working on various developments that are multifamily, but they're more to the below market rate with below market rate affordable housing restrictions for those income restrictions. As an example, we have 41 apartments on Buena Vista, 80 between Miller and San Juan Road or 4th Street, and we have 49 senior units that were just approved along Line Street, between Line Street and West Side Boulevard. We haven't seen a lot of market rate multifamily housing, and as proposed, the multifamily would be for market rate housing. That's an image that you have in your packets of the elevations. We have a duplex and a triplex component for a total of 35 multifamily housing units as part of the entire subdivision, and that will constitute 15% of the project site as multifamily. There is a condition in the draft resolution and the tentative map that indicates that the multifamily component be constructed during the time of the construction of the single-family homes, if approved by the council. The condition actually indicates that the applicant cannot obtain the 165th building permit for their single-family home until they get their building permits for the multifamily, and they are actually under the construction of the multifamily, and that the whole subdivision cannot be finalized until the multifamily is finalized actually first before the last single-family home. And so that's part of the conditions that the applicant agreed to it as well. And the other component to this subdivision is the extension of Valley View Park. The applicant is proposing an extension of approximately 2.53, 2.54 acres to the existing park, and also about just a little under an acre, about 0.8 of an acre of a linear park from the proposed park all along Mimosa Street to the north. And the park, there's a condition in the conditions of approval that require Parks and Rec review of the proposed improvements to the park. And the park, there's also another condition that indicates that the park dedication and improvements have to be made by a certain time. I believe it's before obtaining the 145th building permit, the park shall be dedicated and improved for the extension of the park and the linear park as well. I do want to indicate there's another item that talks about a reimbursement agreement that the applicant would like to go agree with the city council, and they are seeking impact fee credits for the acquisition, the Quimby Fee Act land acquisition, because instead of paying the impact fees for the city to dedicate land on a different site, the applicant is actually dedicating the land on the site, so they are just asking for the credits on the Quimby land acquisition. And also, because they're doing the improvements of the park, normally the applicant would have to pay impact fees for the construction of the park, but because they're actually constructing the park, they are actually asking for credits on that as well. But we can go more into detail when we actually look at the reimbursement agreement a little bit more in detail. Just these are other slides regarding the park and the extension of the park and the multi-family component as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about proposed circulation. The applicant on the tentative map has indicated that the main entry will be off of Enterprise Road, which is off of Airline Highway, and onto the side would be off of Glenview Drive and off of Mimosa Street, which is through Enterprise Road. Mimosa Street is actually being proposed to end at the north property line, and the expectation is that upon future development to the north, Mimosa Street will connect to Union Road, and then Union Road will connect to Fairview, and that intersection in the future would be signalized as well. Future vicinity improvements require the signalization of Enterprise Road and Airline Highway, and as I mentioned, the signalization of Union and Fairview Road. The traffic study indicated that there's warrants for signalization on Enterprise and Airline Highway, and also Fairview and Union Road. However, with the development of this project, if it's approved by the council, the applicant is also willing, pending Caltrans approval, to actually install the signal at Enterprise and Airline Highway. At this time, the mitigation measure, how it reads on the traffic report, is that prior to issuance of the first building permit, if approved, there has to be an additional traffic analysis that's conducted. The applicant would have to fund a traffic analysis. Us, the City of Hollister, as the lead agency, would prepare that traffic report to analyze and see if what their pro rata share would be for the installation of the signal. And at that point, the reimbursement agreement is actually seeking the applicant to be reimbursed. They will install it, pay for that, but they're seeking reimbursement for their pro rata share on Enterprise and Airline Highway. On Fairview, the applicant is going to be dedicating about 32 feet along Fairview Road, and that is for the extension of Fairview Road, the widening, of Fairview Road, for it to have sidewalk, curb, and gutter, a bicycle lane level 2, and extend the widening of Fairview Road as well. There will be two 20-foot wide pedestrian access easements to the Cielo Vista development. They're also going to serve as utility easements, underground utility easements for water, sewer, and also they will serve as an emergency vehicle access only for the Cielo Vista development. There is a third paseo or pedestrian access, 20 feet wide, with an emergency vehicle access only to Fairview Road as well. A little bit of the outreach process. The property, most of the site is actually within the county, as you know, and the applicant actually started out with the county. However, the property is within the sphere of influence of the City of Hollister and within the urban service area. So a few months after working with the county, they actually decided to come with the city and begin the process with the City of Hollister. And on August 17, 2015, the applicant came before the City Council to request the initiation of pre-zoning of the site into the City of Hollister. And essentially it's just indicating that there were the services in the vicinity for the property to be annexed into the City of Hollister. And the City Council adopted a resolution 2015-158, essentially indicating that the property can be initiated. So with that, the applicant funded the cost for an environmental impact report. And on June 20th, 2016, the notice of preparation was published in the newspaper, and also it was sent out to the vicinity owners of the property within 300 feet of the project site, indicating that an environmental impact report was going to be prepared for the project to analyze any potential significant impacts on the site for the project. there was a public comment period, and it was sent out also to all the responsible agencies, including Caltrans, Hollister School District, San Isidro County Water District, all the responsible agencies of the city of Hollister. On January 17th, approximately a year later, that draft environmental impact report was finalized, prepared, and a notice of availability was sent out again to neighbors within 300 feet, to responsible agencies as well, indicating that there is a 45-day period for any type of public comments regarding the draft environmental impact report. All the studies that were prepared, biological, traffic, noise, were also as part of the appendices for the draft environmental impact report. March 2nd, the public period ended. On June 15, 2017, the applicant held a community meeting to address the public in regards to the project. And on September 28, 2017, the Planning Commission held a duly noted Planning Commission meeting to discuss the recommendation of approval of the environmental impact report, the tentative map, the conditional use permit for planning development, and the site and architectural review, and the pre-zone to the City Council. So essentially what you have now, including the resolutions, were provided to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation to the City Council. And again, it was duly noted. Notifications were sent out, and after listening to public hearing for and against the project, the Planning Commission, in a unanimous vote, voted to recommend the approval of these entitlements to the City Council. Again, this was September 28, 2017. The applicant at that point could have requested a public hearing with the City Council as soon as October. However, during that time, if you recall, it was August when we had the first meeting regarding the potential growth management ordinance of for the city. And so the applicant decided to hold off a little bit to see where that growth management ordinance was going to what was going to happen with that. We had another meeting in November regarding the growth management ordinance, and another special meeting in December, and the last one was in January, adopting the first reading of the growth management ordinance. And so because one of the exemptions on the growth management ordinance indicated that projects that were that received a application completeness letter, as it did for Roberts Ranch, they felt comfortable to then proceed for City Council public hearing today for February 20th. And again, this meeting was scheduled, duly noted. It was published in the newspaper. 304 notices were sent out as well. And so here we are today with the entitlement request for this project. With this, staff recommends that the City Council of the City of Hollister approve the following motion. Adopt Resolution 2018-37. Essentially, that motion would be approving the environmental impact report and the mitigation and monitoring and reporting program for the Roberts Ranch subdivision. The other motion would be to read by title only, waive full reading, and introduce ordinance number 1151, an ordinance pre-zoning the property, the Roberts Ranch property, and scheduling a second reading for the March 5th City Council meeting. That's the other motion that will not approve the project subdivision, just the pre-zoning. And lastly, Resolution 38, 39, and 40 will approve the subdivision pending your yes vote. And 38 would approve the tentative map. 39 would approve the conditional use permit for the planned unit development to allow for the multifamily component. And 40 would approve the site and architectural review application for the site layout of the multifamily part of the project. Are there any questions for staff?
Sit down and take a breath.
Yes. And I'll take a drink of my coffee too.
Good presentation. Abraham, I believe that your goal here tonight is for the adoption of the resolutions by motion on each one of them, separately?
That is correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Madam Vice Mayor, yes.
Okay.
That is correct. The first 37 will approve the environmental impact report, if that's the will of the council. Ordinance 51, the pre-zone, if that's the will of the council. And then 38, 39, and 40, the subdivision and
Okay.
multifamily.
Do we have a comment by legal counsel?
Yes, I was going to recommend that you handle each of the resolutions separately and
Right.
take a vote if you deem
Yeah.
your choice to do so separately.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll bring it to council level. Comments?
I'm just excited because I remember when I was on the planning commission in 2000, when the West of Fairview project were brought before us. So it's been a little while. This project has been in, and it is in the sphere of influence, so it can be considered an infill project. It's, has been on the planning, it's been on the general plan now for 20 years.
That's correct, Councilmember Friend. You're absolutely right. It is Chapter 2 of our land use. The land use element of the general plan does have this site as priority infill, basically indicating that really we should be focusing on areas west of Fairview before going.
Yes, go ahead.
I just have a question. I believe when they built the homes along Glenview
Yes.
in that subdivision that one of our council members lives in, that those people paid impact fees for that light on Enterprise. I thought they've been talking about that for quite a while. Same with Quail Hollow. I thought.
Paid into a benefit area for
Yeah.
the traffic signal? I apologize. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can certainly.
I was just looking at it, and I thought I remembered talking about Enterprise Road before, but I'm
Yes.
glad to see that the applicant has stepped up and is going to signalize that, because that's going to add a huge amount of traffic in that, on that road, because now those people only have one exit to get out of that division. Now they're going to have the second one, so.
Correct.
I'm glad to see that the Enterprise Road will have a signal on it pending Caltrans approval.
Okay.
Correct.
And Abraham, can you bring in the slide for the park? The area designated for the park, right? Are there any buildings there or a restroom, public restrooms or anything there at the park?
The other part of the park, yes.
Yeah, on the other part of the park, the existing one, is there?
Whale Park has a restaurant.
Yes.
Yes.
It's on the other side.
Process right now.
Right to the left.
I believe it's in the
Okay.
process, right?
Yes.
Of yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments from City Council? Yes.
Go ahead. That's right. Go.
Yes,
That's correct.
To the left a
Councilman
little
Clower?
No, to the left.
So just procedurally,
Actually, left.
if we're going to vote on
Right there.
one resolution at a time, we should probably talk about one resolution at a time. That way we
Absolutely.
don't
Right.
get all bungled and,
That's right.
okay, because there's a lot of stuff going on here.
There is.
So it looks like the first resolution is regarding the
Environmental impact.
EIR.
You
Is
got
that
it.
correct?
That's correct, Councilman.
Okay, so on this portion of the agenda, I have two questions. Well, really only one question because the other one's already been addressed. But is cumulative T3 in terms of mitigation, the light at Hillcrest and Fairview? I thought I had heard in the past that there was some sort of trigger for that to be put in total number of units along the Fairview corridor being completed. Do we know what that number is and where the other subdivisions that are currently under construction are with that number so that we can have an expectation of when that light would actually go in?
It's a good question, Councilman Clower. Yes, so the cumulative part of it is essentially analyzing existing development plus project plus all those projects that have been approved. And essentially those projects that have been approved are at tentative map stage. So if a tentative map is approved, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to move forward for actual development. And I mean, that's the expectation because they've gone through a lot of work preparing the plans, the environmental, going through planning commission, sometimes council for improvement. So the expectation is that they actually do improve. However, when it comes to, like in this case, cumulative T3, the requirement is that prior to issuance of the first building permit, an additional traffic analysis is done. So us as the lead agency, the City of Hollister is going to require the applicant to fund this traffic analysis, and as part of the traffic analysis, it's going to essentially acquire two things. One is to indicate what the pro rata share of these the signalization, because it's warranted. This analysis indicates that the signalization is warranted. However, your question as to when it's going to be placed, it's going to be on that traffic study, on that traffic analysis, is going to be their pro rata share calculation, and they're going to analyze what's actually being constructed at this time, and if the installation of the signalization is going to be required at any time during the construction of this project at that point, because at that point we'll have more of a clearer idea of who's actually developing, as opposed to just being a cumulative approved tentative map. So at that point we should be more clear if it's warranted at that point, and if not, then prior to first building permit issuance of the other tentative map, at that point, if it's warranted, or it's already warranted, but if it's required to be installed, then we'll know at that point as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Do we know if the county has a trigger for that intersection, since it's kind of both jurisdictions?
For Hillcrest
and Fairview.
Hillcrest and Fairview.
The reason I bring it up, because I thought that I read something about that when the intersection at Valley View and Sunny Slope was being discussed.
Okay.
500. Okay, so can we just double check that? 'Cause
Absolutely.
it sounds like it might be 500 total for that corridor. And
Absolutely.
this will obviously would be adding some to that.
Absolutely.
And probably bring that number, get closer to that number as it goes.
Yeah.
That's my only question on this portion of the agenda.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Thank you. I have a lot of comments on this one, and
Sure.
I just, if any of my comments, in your opinion, should be directed to a different section of the resolution, because we are doing 5 items tonight, please just let me know, and I'd be happy to save them for that. But I think several of them actually overlap into multiple categories, so I think we should just address them all.
Absolutely.
So right when I first was appointed to the city council, this was an issue that was brought to my attention because it's in District 4.
Yes.
There was a lot of public concern. And when I reached out to the, I actually don't recall if the developer reached out to me or if I reached out to him. Either way, we became in contact with Peter Hellman. Peter Hellman was gracious enough to set up a community meeting back in June of last year.
Correct.
And many concerns were brought up. A lot of concerns were brought up around the access to the area, the multifamily housing, how are we going to patrol and monitor the park, and these are the comments. I'm just going back to the community meeting.
Sure.
The area around Cielo Vista, originally those were set to be much higher density. I believe the original 5,500 square feet lots,
Yes.
and that would equal roughly 4 or 5 houses behind an existing Cielo Vista lot. So if you look at where we are today, there has been what I would consider real progress made in this map. You have the 1 quarter-acre lots behind Cielo Vista now.
Yes.
We also have the 2.5-acre park. The addition of the linear park on the outside. One thing I don't think you mentioned is the meandering sidewalk on the Fairview side,
Yes.
and the nice setback. So you're not just going to have a monolithic, square-looking sidewalk. It's going to match up with the Ward Homes development that is
Yes.
already approved to begin construction on the north side. We don't know when a Ward Homes will begin construction, but that may happen.
Correct.
So I want to commend the developer on working with the community and really reaching out and listening and hearing what our concerns were and addressing many of the concerns. Now, with that being said, there's obviously a huge traffic concern within our city,
Yes.
and I would hazard a guess that every one of us up here have heard from constituents saying that we need to closely monitor and have smart growth.
Correct.
This lot is low-density housing is between 1 and 8 units per lot. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councilman Aguilar.
So if you do the math, 8 units times 54.9 acres, somewhere around there, it comes to almost 500, within 10 units of 500 homes. So this developer is coming in and recommending much less density than that. Obviously with the, 192 on the single and 35 on the multi, is that correct?
That's correct, Councilman Aguilar.
So it's a much lower density. There's a great range of options here, from some small rentals all the way up to the quarter-acre lots.
Correct.
Now, with some of the concerns that I feel have not been addressed adequately yet, which is the access. So this is a great map to look at it. You're going to have access off of essentially, one road off of Enterprise. Now, Enterprise does have 2 entrances to the development. You'll have Glenview and Mimosa.
Correct.
But one of the facts that I noted in the March 2017 Caltrans response to the, I think it was still the draft EIR at the time.
Yes.
Was that Caltrans mentions that signalization is warranted on the, it seems like on the Enterprise legs of the stoplight at Enterprise and 25.
You got it.
However, not on the state highway portion of 25. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct. It would be on Enterprise and Airline.
Okay.
Correct.
But I thought I heard you say that it was warranted, the light was warranted there in the traffic study, but I think Caltrans said it's only warranted for the legs, not the main road of Enterprise.
I can confirm that, Councilman Gillio, but
Okay.
yeah, but it is warranted now, but not necessarily required with this project.
Okay, but it is warranted. So
yes, it is.
There's a
correct.
good chance that Caltrans would approve this light. Is that what your staff opinion is?
Yes, it would have to be submitted to them for their review and approval.
Okay.
Correct.
So getting back to access, and then the other thing Caltrans states in their letter, and I'm paraphrasing here, not stating exactly, is that they strongly recommend having some sort of access to Fairview Road because they don't want basically all of that traffic, the new traffic, dumped on the state highway system. And that's from their March 2017 letter. I can read it verbatim if you want. Do you recall that? Does that sound familiar?
Yes, it's all part of the draft environmental impact report. Yes,
Okay.
Councilman Gillio.
And can you talk about why we don't have connectivity to Fairview Road? Why we don't have another access point?
From the project?
Yeah, and my understanding is that the future, obviously, when this is all built out, it's kind of a stage process. You know, if Award Homes was already built, Mimosa would have been stubbed up to this project, essentially.
Yes.
This project would have tapped into Mimosa. And as you can see, if the audience is looking, there's that little bell curve around the park. That bell curve would actually continue north towards St. Benedict's Church. It would tee into Union Road. Union Road, you could make a left and go back towards town. Or you can make a right and go towards Fairview, where it will be signalized.
You got it.
So
yeah,
I think that's the biggest concern that I have right now, along with a few others. And can you talk about how we could potentially mitigate that traffic concern?
Absolutely, Councilman Gillio, and thank you for bringing that up. The reason why the project site itself does not have one of the main reasons in consulting with the engineering department of why there was not a access directly from the project site onto Fairview Road is because of its close proximity to Union and Fairview, the future intersection of Fairview and Union, as you mentioned. Award Homes, the project to the north, is conditioned, and as part of their tentative map, essentially to extend Union Road directly through their project site and connect with Fairview Road, and that's going to be signalized in the future. This project essentially is extending Mimosa Street all the way to the north property lane, and then it is expected that the Award Homes connect from Union to Mimosa. So that's going to be connected, and then as you mentioned, Councilman Gillio, at that point, Mimosa Street, when it hits Union, it can either go left back to town or right to Fairview Road, and access to Fairview from the project site was considered to be in too close of a proximity from that future intersection of Union and Fairview Road, and it was decided that the main access should be through Enterprise, and a pending future approval of the Award Homes final map. The final map still has to go before council as part of the development agreement, and as part of the tentative map would be to approve their final map, and then their construction of that road would be a requirement. In talking with the Award Homes, our last meeting last week, we met with the Award Homes, and the applicant is currently working on the final map. They've actually have a final map already ready, and it's under review by the city of Hollister, and it's expected to come before you. And talking with the applicant of Award Homes sometime this year, they're hoping by like May or so to come before you for final map approval, and then improvements to the site a little bit later. That's their expectation. It's not a guarantee, but that is their expectation.
What's the time frame for Award Homes? Is it stipulated that they have to make those improvements before building one house or before building 100, or is it not stipulated at all?
It is regarding the improvements on the road for Award Homes. They actually have a phase as phase 1A and phase 1B. Phase 1A essentially would require the extension of Union to Fairview Road, and then Phase 1B would require the connection from Union to Mimosa. As part of the final map that will come before you, what we would recommend is that when they approve the final map for 1A, that an easement also recorded for improvements of Union to Mimosa as part of 1A. Regarding at what point do they have to construct the road, I think maybe the senior engineer can help. Yes, in regards to what point. Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Yes. When we spoke with the Ward Homes, they were speaking of trying to get their final map in for approval. I believe it was by April. Does that sound about right? When they get their final map, they'd have a subdivision improvement agreement that would have a schedule that says that they need to perform the improvements within 18 months of the approval of that subdivision improvement agreement. So it should happen pretty fast. You were speaking about Phase 1A and 1B? Okay. Yeah, what they would do with Phase 1A, that would be Union to Mimosa, and then across Phase 1A portion. The Phase 1B portion, they would provide the city with an easement across that property, as well as the improvements across that property, so that there would be connectivity to the Roberts Ranch project.
Okay, and is that something that we can negotiate in the final map, or is it already set and agreed upon with prior contracts and agreements with this other developer, Ward Homes?
I believe it's...
For example, if the council's will was, hey, before you build 30 homes, you got to have these improvements done, is that something that can be done, or are we already past that stage with this? I'm not familiar with the Ward Homes. It's before my time.
Yeah, their condition.
No, that's already past. We're past that point.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And then the
Yes.
Possibly for the traffic engineer as well, or for both of you folks, have you folks considered a right in, right out? Which, if you look at the circle next to Fairview Road up there, where it has the easement to get over to Fairview Road, at the dead end of, I believe it's Ranch Road. What were your thoughts of having a right in, right out, which means if you're coming north from Fairview, you could turn right into the development, and if you're leaving the development, you could turn right and head down towards the stoplight at 25 and Fairview. Has that been considered? And if it hasn't, is it something that is worth looking into and that you guys would support as staff?
Yeah, I think it's something that we could look into and support.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and does that need to be that question there? Is that something that would have to the EIR would have to be adjusted?
I was going to address that. Thank you, Councilman Galileo. Yeah, so if that is a desire of the council to look into the possibility of a right in, right out, we would probably look at right out with an acceleration lane on Fairview, and then a right in into the project site with a deceleration lane on Fairview as well. But that would have to be a you can still approve the EIR, but prior to development of the site, we would want to analyze. We would request an amendment to the traffic study to analyze if that's the desire of the city council, any potential impacts for that request. We can proceed if no significant unavoidable impacts are determined based on that analysis. But if they are, then we would have to come back for that change before the city council.
Okay. Are there any other comments from city council at this time? If not, we'll move on to our public hearing. Public hearing is open. Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor.
Okay.
William Lee and Marty Richmond will be after him.
Good evening, Council. Most of you know me from San Benito Shutter, but I'm also a neighbor of this project. And Mr. Gillio, you and I have never spoken on this project before, But what you just voiced tonight is almost identical to what I voiced at the Planning Commission meeting. I am completely for this project. I think the developer has done a great job of making modifications to make this project work, from the bigger lots against Cielo Vista to the park to all kinds of things that they've done. The one thing that's bothered me about this project all along is the Caltrans letter, and I'll actually read the words, Mr. Gillio. We strongly recommend other site plan alternatives, such as a new connection to Fairview Road that would allow functional circulation without the reliance on one main access point at Enterprise Road. Caltrans has recommended something else be done, and they've specifically recommended that one of those things could be a connection to Fairview Road. I raised this issue at the Planning Commission meeting, and obviously I get my couple minutes to speak. When I sat down, the Planning Commission asked the city engineer, and the answer given was just slightly different than the answer you heard tonight as to why not. The comment made by the engineer that night was that the distance was too close to where the intersection would be at Cielo Vista when that signal goes in when Dividend Homes and Gavilan College builds. Obviously, I'm not given an opportunity to refute that, but if you look at the distance from Airline to that intersection at Cielo Vista, it's almost within just a few feet identical of the distance that would be from that signal at Cielo Vista to their connection at Fairview. So the only thing that I would ask you guys to condition on this project tonight is that there is a connection there at Fairview Road. And if you don't do that, then those homes get built and there's only a 20 or 30 foot emergency access, and then you can never come back and decide to add it later. If you have the developer remove one lot, which Peter's told me he is willing to do if he has to do it, even if you don't build it, you'll have the space there to build it down the road. But if you approve it the way it's drawn up here on the on the map, if I could get the map back up where that ECV is, there's only it's either 20 or 30 feet that's there, and that's not enough for any kind of an intersection, even a right in, right out. So he's going to have to remove one lot to get that. But if you can do that, that's the only thing that you guys can control. You guys can't control what's going on State Route 25 and 156 going in and out of town. I realize those are things that we all have concerns about, and I'm sure your constituents have concerns about, but we cannot condition on this developer to go widen Highway 25 from town to 101. That's not practical, that's not possible. But what we can condition are things that do allow for good local circulation of traffic. And I realize that the Mimosa connection potentially is a connection down the road, but there's a couple of problems with that. It's conditioned on someone else's development, and also it's one street to another, as opposed to he directly contacts it and you'd have direct connection here. So I'd really encourage you guys to think about that, and I would request that you condition the project on that. Otherwise, I have no issues with the project. I think the developer's done a marvelous job of addressing all the concerns that have been raised throughout this process, and I think that this would be a real win for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty
other
Richmond?
speakers? Marty?
Hi, Marty Richmond from Hollister. I wanted to also talk about traffic issue. First of all, let me, so the previous speaker made some good points, and in general, without trying to, re-engineer it, I agree that you need an access to Fairview. But my concern is more of the fact that, if you go on the internet and take a map like this, there's always a plus sign and a minus sign so you can back up and you can zoom in. Well, we can't back up on this kind of map. My concern is that we keep looking at these developments as individual items and go, okay, well, they're not going to impact anything. And the next one comes along, oh, they're not going to impact anything. And then the third one comes along. Now, this is one development in a whole series of developments that are coming in the same exact area. They're basically all going to wind up piled up on top of each other, whether it's over by the church or whether it's going to be Award Homes or whatever. And I'll go back to my original statement earlier today. They're all going to be using the same road to try and get out of town. And although I agree 100% we can't do anything about 156 if the state won't do it, we can't do anything about 25 if the state won't do it. But we are responsible for getting these guys to the highway. And I am concerned, although I think the developer has done some really good accommodations here for Sella Vista and for multifamily housing. I want to give them credit. I don't want them to think I'm greedy. But I'm concerned when you pile all these together, and there's a bunch of them there. The award homes in this one are not the only two. You're going to have a mess trying to get people to the state highway, and there's basically 3 or 4 ways to do it, as I covered in my earlier talk about general problems. We've got to come up with a way to get them, and I hate to sound greedy, but to get them to help pay to widen it. And I understand they're only legally required to pay their fair share, and therefore legally that's all we can ask for. But you know, people pay a lot of money to get the permission to develop because there's an enormous potential for profit. And I am a for-profit guy. I don't want to take a profit away from anybody for my personal use. But we've got to talk about moving some of that money into fixing Union Road so it can handle all this traffic that's going to come together, and not just for Roberts Ranch, but for all these guys. And my concern is that we don't have, I never see a regional report that says this is the regional problem. It's a small region, it's our region. It's a regional problem, and this is how we're going to solve it. And the same thing goes for Fairview, and the same thing goes for Buena Vista, and all the places we use to get to the highways. If the state won't fix the highways, that's their problem. But I think that's important, and I think we ought to work on that. Thank you for your time.
Any other speakers?
Peter Hellman.
Good evening, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Peter Hellman. I'm one of the managing partners of Hollister Enterprise, the applicant for Roberts Ranch. And I've just had a couple of brief comments I'd like to make. First of all, we are absolutely thrilled to be here after 4.5 years, and are so thankful to the city planning and engineering staff, city management, and city manager, and Soren, the city attorney, to shepherd us along the way to get us here. I don't want to add a lot to the thunder that Abraham has already provided. I think he did a terrific job of describing the entitlements and the project and so forth. And just generally speaking, I want to say that I think that we've demonstrated that Roberts Ranch is a great project. It conforms to the city general plan and the county general plan. In fact, it substantially underbuilds both. We have made a number of revisions to the project over the years now that to reflect the feedback and the requests that we've received from the neighbors and so forth. I think our project is packed with a significant number of community benefits, and we've been lucky enough to earn the support of your city staff and the unanimous support of your planning commission, and we hope we earn your support as well tonight. I'll be here to answer any questions you have and so forth. Other than that, that's it for my prepared remarks.
Thank you.
There are no more speakers, Madam Vice Mayor.
All right. Being there's no other speakers, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to council level. Yes.
I have a comment.
Mr. Friend.
And I'm going to take off on what Jim brought up and the gentleman in the back. If you use that, what's considered now an emergency easement as a, continue it as a road, there's a road across Fairview from that. So now you've created another Hillcrest intersection. And you're going to have 3/4 of the people that live in that development take that road to Fairview rather than go around to Union, which Union is going to be a signalized intersection.
That's correct.
This wouldn't even warrant a stop sign. So now you're going to have 3/4 of those people dumping onto Fairview without benefit of a stoplight or a stop sign.
Correct.
Which we all know what happened at Fairview or Hillcrest and a few of the other ones before we had lights there. You're asking for a bad situation. And you've also taken the value of all those homes along that one street and lessened them because it's not a closed little community now. That will become the main entrance and exit to this project, that one off of Fairview. So now you've got 192 homes plus the other one, so you've probably got 300 cars going out that way. They're not going to go down to Enterprise, they're going to go out to Fairview and down.
Fairview.
And no light, no stop sign, no nothing, and they're going to have a four-way intersection there. I just don't think that's a wise idea. I'm not against putting other accesses in there. I'm just thinking that's a bad spot to put it. I mean, it would be better to go through Sierra Vista than Cella Vista than what everybody's talking about, I think.
Yes. Yes. Bill?
No, I kind of, to your point, Ray, or Councilman Friend, and actually even when Marty Richmond kind of speaks about the cumulative effect of traffic in the area, et cetera, I truly believe that the Caltrans letter that we're kind of referring to now didn't contemplate or didn't understand that the Union Fairview intersection was kind of part of this program. Again, this particular development was sort of contemplated again in 1992 with Award Homes or with the West of Fairview project. So this notion of Mimosa and the Spine Road that basically goes to what's now the church always contemplated having that one access onto Fairview, which for most people, again, we need to kind of understand the idea about Fairview is that it's an arterial and it's supposed to carry traffic. If we have a stoplight every 300 feet again, all of a sudden we're recreating the San Benito Street, and that all of a sudden doesn't do it's not doing necessarily what it's intended to do, is carry traffic north-south in a quicker manner. So I agree with you to some extent, Councilman Friend, in that having an unsignalized intersection there could be very dangerous. Having more of those things along Fairview, especially from 25 to Sunny Slope, was never really the intention. I know we're trying to realign John Smith Road. That was another one of the projects that we were working on with the developers. But I just want to make sure that, again, I don't have absolute 100% proof, but I don't think that the Caltrans letter that we were discussing actually realized that 200 or 300 feet to the north was a really large controlled intersection.
Okay. Are there, Councilmember Gilio?
Yeah, regarding the converting the EVS access to Fairview, my thought is this is my big concern is that Award Homes, for whatever reason, if you want to call it the economy, or they just decide that they don't want to build for 3 or 4 years, or they just don't build forever, then we're stuck with one access. That's all we have now. That's all we can count on now, because we don't know anything else. Nothing else is guaranteed. I've heard actually that they were going to start next month, and now I'm hearing they're going to start in May. So there's kind of a nebulous thought to that north access. So the thought that I was bringing up was to address Councilman Refren's concern. I actually agree with you 100% that having a large four-way or signalized intersection or stop sign or unsignalized or uncontrolled where you can make a left-hand turn coming out of the development could cause some major issues. Well, it wasn't actually my idea. It was a staff member's idea that brought it to my attention that you can do what's called a right in, right out. So if you're driving from, let's say, Hillcrest on Fairview and you're headed southbound towards Ridgemark, you would be able to come into a turn lane right along the backside of the project there and make a right-hand turn into the development. When you're leaving the development, you would not be able to make a left-hand turn onto Fairview. There would be an acceleration lane, and you would have to make a right-hand turn. And my thought was, after talking with staff, is if we are going to move forward and approve this project, is to at least have that temporarily in place so that if, and worst case scenario happens, Award Homes is never built or not done, that we have another access point and we don't have all of those people dumping out onto Enterprise, which is already a very busy and dangerous intersection, which eventually will be signalized. And a lot of the neighbors are very concerned there on Mimosa, Glenview, that area of increasing this traffic and only having one entry point. So I would say if Award Homes was done and the road was complete and everything was, we could drive out there and make that connection now. I don't even think this would be necessary. So temporarily, if we can, my thought is, what, and this is directed towards you, sorry,
Sure.
is what are your thoughts towards, having that temporary right in, right out, so that maybe it never even has to get done. Maybe by the time Award Homes is getting started, Roberts Ranch is getting started, Award Homes already has this in place, and it's a moot point. We don't even have to deal with it. But if not, what do you think about
Sure,
that?
I can respond to that, Councilman Gallillo. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the temporary part of it. If it is the desire of the council to approve it, it would be recommended that if that's right in, right out on Fairview would be supported by the council, that it would be contingent on the improvement of Mimosa, only in a temporary nature. But yes, absolutely, if that's the desire, it would be right out into Fairview with an acceleration lane, and then, as you mentioned, for vehicles heading southbound on Fairview from, say, Hillcrest, a deceleration lane onto the project site. But yes, as you mentioned, in a temporary basis, contingent upon the improvements on the award or the project to the north's improvement of the road to connect to Mimosa. If that is the desire, yes, it would be supported more of a temporary rather than permanent.
Okay, and I have two more quick points that may end up affecting the EIR, or they may be in the future in the process. You can
Sure.
let me know. So the other issue is we'd like to see about if staff has any interest in inputting some traffic calming in between Mimosa and Highway 25 on Enterprise. So you have two intersections there, and you're going to have a huge 5-acre park with a lot of kids that are going to want to be getting to the park on foot, on bike, on scooters and that sort of thing. So I would be interested in seeing some sort of traffic calming, whether it's curb bulb outs or lighted crosswalks or whatever staff would propose at Mimosa and Enterprise, and at Glenview and Enterprise, and I want to get your thoughts on that.
Sure, Councilman Gallillo. Yeah, absolutely. If that's a desire of the council, we can absolutely have that as a condition to where staff can support a condition indicating that the applicant fund a traffic consultant to discuss any type of traffic calming measures on the site, and also participate in the actual improvements of any potential traffic calming measures along Enterprise, Glenview, and Mimosa. That's a desire of the council, absolutely.
And in a procedural matter, would that motion need to be made for when we talked about the EIR, or later on in the process with one of the other 4 steps?
With the tentative map, Councilman Gallillo, yes.
Tentative map.
Okay. Yes.
And then my last comment, Madam Mayor, and I apologize, Vice Mayor, is the 1/4-acre lots that are around Cielo Vista. I'd already talked with Peter Hellman, and they're interested in agreeing to make those a little bit below grade, so they're not. We ran into an issue over near Buena Vista and that development. Bonneview and that development where a grade came in at 5 feet, which was at the top of the existing neighbor's fence. So would that request need to be in the EIR or the tentative map?
That would be the tentative map as well, Councilman Gallillo. Yes,
Okay.
The grade differential being below.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Clower?
I apologize. I have a bunch of half thoughts.
No worries.
And I think that in the past we've gotten ourselves into trouble when we try to engineer at the dais. I don't necessarily think that any of us have that background. I know I don't. So my half thought is that temporary access on Fairview I'd probably be okay with, but I'd prefer to have poor safe circulation than great unsafe or great dangerous circulation. And I think what happens if you don't be careful about how that is actually engineered is that you create a bigger, more dangerous problem than just having people drive 25 miles an hour over to Enterprise. So if it's temporary, or if it's, hey, we won't build out these lots and we'll set aside some funds in a kitty so that if Mimosa and Union isn't done by the time they get over to that construction, then that's something that I'd be okay with. But I've seen in the past where you put in temporary fixes and they become long-term and they stay dangerous the entire time. Yeah. There was a temporary access on Santa Ana at Rosebud in the county, and people would get rear-ended there all the time because the actual improvements that should have been done for that turn weren't done because it was temporary.
So if we're going to say temporary, I think we probably want to limit that amount of time as much as possible. Don't build it until you absolutely have to and you find out that those other options aren't there. Because I think the right in, right out thing is okay, but it's not a great fix for the problem that everybody is bringing up, or at least the problem that they're assuming is going to happen, because we don't have a whole lot of right in, right outs, and definitely not on a road where people are driving 55, 60 miles an hour. And if you're going to take a right-hand turn onto the road, you really should be accelerating almost all the way to the Cielo Vista turn. You can't turn right at Santa Ana on Fairview because you don't have enough time to get going fast enough unless you have a green light. So I think we need to be really careful that we don't create a more dangerous situation on Fairview to try to solve something that maybe would be a dangerous situation on Enterprise, which doesn't look like it's even in the EIR necessarily. So I'm open to options, just let's not make something worse by trying to make something else better. That's it.
Councilmember Friend?
It just seems to me, and I didn't mean to get into this long argument.
Sure.
Not an argument, discussion.
Discussion.
It seems to me that we're in control. And we can tell Award Homes, you will build out Union Road and Mimosa Extension before you do anything. Or you don't build that project and we'll put a road in there. We'll take that light from Union Road and put it down here on whatever that new turnout would be there. I mean, it just seems like the solution is fairly easy. Ward Homes is already in the process. We tell them stage one is put the street improvements in. That way, whoever builds out first has got the problem solved. Whether Ward Homes does it or this project does it. And the traffic calming, I agree with Jim that especially down by the park, there should be something there, whether it's a stop sign or something. But I think we're in control, and we could tell Award Homes, Project 1A, Mimosa and Union Road. Or
Absolutely.
don't build.
Absolutely,
Somebody else will
Councilman.
build there. And then if they don't want to do that, then we have the option of putting in the turn that Jim's talking about.
Absolutely, Councilman Gilio. Councilman Friend, yes. In response to that, the Phase 1A will require the connection from Union to Fairview, 1B from Union to Mimosa. However, yes, on our discussions with them, at least provide an easement to connect to Mimosa with improvements to the road for that road too. At least the center 2 lanes to be able to connect.
I don't think an easement. I think build the road.
With the improvements, absolutely.
Yeah, take the improvement.
With them improving, yes, and that is going to come before you, and from our discussions in
And
May.
then we can ask the developer to hold off on those 2 lots there until Mimosa's done. And if he's first, then we hold those lots until the end, and then we make that adjustment. Because it's going to take curb and gutter and turnout and all that stuff. Put a roundabout there.
Put a circle there.
Abraham,
Yes.
just a clarification. I know
Sure.
a former speaker said that it was 1 lot. The clarification, I see 2 lots up there. So is it 2 lots that we're talking about here?
Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, is it on the Fairview connection?
Yeah,
or?
facing Fairview.
So there is one access easement, EVA easement being proposed, and then 1 lot on each side of
Each
the
side?
easement.
Okay, 2 lots.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on this?
No, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2018-37 with the recommendation that Award Homes build out their Phase 1, the improvements to Mimosa and Union.
Okay, clarification from legal counsel. On this, the ordinance 1151, should that be the first to be approved before resolutions? Because I believe what we wanted to do is have a motion and approve or, a vote on each one of the resolutions separately.
Yeah, it is kind of confusing because on the one hand, on the agenda, if you look at the items, I believe the first item is the pre-zone.
Right.
And then on the recommendations, it's adopting the resolution. So I would go with the pre-zone first.
All right.
Then move second with the ERR. and then go to the next, which would be the tentative map application. And that's the one that's going to have most of the conditions that you've been discussing with regards to the potential temporary right-in, right-out connection at Fairview Road, as well as the traffic calming at Mimosa and Enterprise, as in Glenview and Enterprise, or any other conditions of approval that you have. Those will touch upon the tentative map approval, which will be the third item. And then you can move along. What I would recommend is that you entertain each of these items separately and vote and do a motion on each of them separately.
Okay, I'll pull my motion back and then make another motion to do 2018 1151 first.
All right, there's a motion to go ahead, approve ordinance 1151. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye as well.
I'll make a motion to
Aye.
approve.
Okay.
So hold on.
All that
That was a pre-zoning. We're going to move on. to the next
pre-zoning.
item.
Okay, so motion carries. All right, now we open it up to resolution 2018-37.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right.
Madam Vice Mayor, prior to moving forward, may I make a procedural recommendation or a question? Do we have to have public comment on the pre-zoning that we just voted on?
That we just did. We had
No, on the
hearing.
pre-zoning. I think that was on the EIR, wasn't it?
It's all bunched on the
It's
agenda.
grouped
Just
together.
want to make sure we're clean so we don't have to come back.
We already passed.
Okay.
Yeah, there was general public comment on all 5 items.
Okay.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And
All
I have
right.
no speaker cards. Miss Councilmember Gillio.
Thank you.
All right, so it's been moved in second. On resolution 2018-37, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay. 1 nay. Okay, 3-1 vote. It passes. All right, going on to resolution 2018-38.
Now, this motion would be with all the improvements that we discussed, that we put the pressure on award homes to build out first, or do the
Condition.
improvements to the streets.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
30.
So I have comments on this because I was trying to focus on the EIR before. And then I just have a question. I've never come across a situation where you're conditioning somebody based on somebody else doing something else. So I kind of want to know if that's even possible before we get to that motion.
Good question, Councilman Clark. I think that instead of conditioning award homes, because award home still is going to be coming before you for the final map, at that point you can condition them. And in this case, if the concern is to do a right-in, right-out, for this, temporarily contingent upon award homes doing the extension to Mimosa, then I think that would be more appropriate. But yeah, I think regarding requiring award homes to do the phase 1, phase 1A and 1B, I think that when they come before you, hopefully by May, that can be done. And this one, just if the council desires to do right in, right out temporarily, then
And
move
not to
them.
devolve any further,
Sure.
but we can't even add conditions to a final map, right? So if that does come up,
The tentative map is what we're talking about here today.
he's talking
here
about
I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying.
Oh, I see.
Procedurally,
That's correct.
okay. So I think we're in a situation where we're not going to be able to tell them to do that. We can ask them to do that, and they can agree, but we can't tell them to. So if you're going to,
We cannot approve their tentative map.
no, they have a map. They
Their
have a
final
tentative
map.
map already from forever
Their
ago.
final map.
So if if we're
Final
going to
map.
ask somebody to do something, it's got to be today, and it's got to be these guys. Because
So the way that would happen would be potentially you could create a condition whereby you would temporarily approve or condition this particular tentative map on the building or construction of a right-in, right-out at the connection at Fairview Road, pending the improvement at Mimosa by award homes in the future. You could do it that way.
Whichever happens first.
So
Well, not
language is a
whichever
little
happens
different.
first.
The language
Yeah.
is different than what
Yeah.
he's recommending. It's more like a if not.
Correct.
Okay, so now I'll try to go back to what I was originally going to talk about on the tentative map, which is condition 67. And I don't know what page it's on, but the language now says that prior to receiving final occupancy of the 165th single-family residential unit, that, well, backtrack. prior to pulling a permit for the 165th unit,
Yes.
the permits for the multifamily would be pulled. And then
Correct.
prior to final on the 165th unit, the multifamily would be at framing stage.
Framing stage.
Which, for me, I'd like to see them done. If you can pull your 165th permit for the single family, at the same time you pull your multifamily, I think that they should be done at the same time. So I'd like, if that ends up being something that people are okay with, I'd like the condition to read more like this. Prior to receiving final occupancy of the 165th single-family residential unit in the subdivision, all multifamily housing shall have received final occupancy by Hollister Building Department. So it's just a change in the timing of the condition.
Would you repeat that one more time, please?
I can bring it up again because there's going to be other comments. But the change goes from all multifamily housing would be at framing stage to what I would recommend is all multifamily housing shall have received their final occupancy. So that would mean that the multifamily is done by the time the 165th unit is done, as opposed to the last unit. It's just more of an assurance that that actually gets built. Yeah, that's my only comment on the tentative map.
Right. So the way that would work is, as part of any motion, you would move to amend condition 61.
67.
Or 67. It's okay. And then you can read in the terms that you would like. And if you get a second on it, then that would be part of the motion.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
So without, okay, go ahead.
This would be the point that I need to reiterate the concerns and potentially see if there's support to add these following conditions. The following conditions are the traffic calming for the area of the intersections of Mimosa and Enterprise and Glenview. And what I would like to do is select an amount so that there's no confusion in the future about who's going to pay for what. I remember we just dealt with Cienega, where the developer ended up paying for a study, but we ended up paying for the improvements years later, and different councils are here and things happen. So perhaps we can settle on a number to be $130,000, and that includes the study and the actual improvements. That would be my recommendation, and that's again for whatever. This isn't. I'm not suggesting that we should. I think Councilmember Clower made a very good point. We should not engineer from the dais. So I think that you guys, as a city staff, should determine what that is, do the studies, but let's have that money there so we can have whatever it is. It's whether it's speed humps, lighted crosswalks, bulb outs, whatever the engineers feel is needed. And then also, I believe that since we didn't do it on the EIR, and that's why I didn't support that, was we should set aside those 2 lots in case we do need that development. And it sounded like there may be additional study that's needed in the EIR based on what I heard you say.
Correct, Councilman Gallego. So, we would have to analyze that potential right in, right out.
Okay.
Yes.
And then finally, I think this would be the appropriate time, based on what you mentioned to me earlier, that the homes around the Cielo Vista perimeter are 18 inches below existing grade.
That would be the condition change would be appropriate on this resolution.
Okay.
Yes.
And then finally, that we meter the amount of homes built so that we don't have, the only thing that's really stopping us here is how many homes can be built as quickly as possible depending on market conditions. So if we were to meter that to say 72 homes per year, which is about 6 homes a month, I would like to see the council consider that as well. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. Any other comments?
Councilmember Gillio, before your meter, the amount of homes, what was the condition right before that?
That was the quarter-acre lots that are around Cielo Vista are approximately 18 inches below grade, the existing Cielo Vista grade.
18?
18 inches, yes.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I was wondering if there's any thoughts or comments from staff on mine. If you want to
wait for? All right. Go ahead.
I don't want to engineer from the dais. So if there's any thoughts or comments,
if I may, Councilmember Gillio, it probably would be a good idea for the lots that you're questioning to actually have an engineering analysis done, so drainage is properly drained off of the lots. It's hard to determine that at the meeting whether the height of the grade will or will not adversely affect where the water goes. So I do know your concerns with the Del Curto Bonneview development, but this is also kind of the same. We want to make sure that the water does not flow onto other people's properties, and it just might make more sense if the site actually goes through an engineering review to determine that.
For sure, and I had talked to Peter Hellman about this quite a while ago, and their group, and they said that currently I believe they're planning on building at grade, and that below grade they didn't think would be a problem, but I definitely agree that we should make sure that it's not a problem before we do it. Yeah.
Okay, and I'd like to request of legal counsel, do we at this time repeat the conditions before the motion?
So basically
There's conditions already set forth.
All right.
So this would be, you can either add new conditions as part of your motion or amend existing conditions that are already in place, such as the one Councilman Clower alluded to, which was condition 61.
67.
67. I keep getting that wrong. I apologize.
I screwed him up.
Okay.
I can provide a summary if that's the desire, and then.
Yeah, we're calling for a motion.
Just a couple questions
Okay,
about
before the motion. All right.
Proposed conditions. So the traffic calming idea would be that they would set aside a certain amount of money that the city would then be able to use to implement the recommendations.
Yes, exactly, and only for those specific locations mentioned, that they wouldn't end up going somewhere else to benefit a different project or neighborhood, just for those two intersection locations.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Another question is, where did the number for 72 homes per year come from?
Well, and actually, I would be okay with 84. So what I was doing is I was looking at like a 2.5 to 3 year build out, just so it's not, so you don't have, I think the only thing that's limiting the build out is market conditions and the amount of labor, amount of houses that can be sold. So if we're able to meter that a little bit better, that was a concern, is that we're not realizing all this growth immediately, that it's over a 2 or 3 year period as opposed to potentially in 6 months. Realistically, it probably wouldn't happen, but we wouldn't control that after we vote on it today.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I can get behind the 84 number better than I could the 72. I think one thing you don't want to do is allow somebody to move forward with their project and then tie their hands too much if the market conditions change. That's what, with that one extra house a month, I think I'd be fine with that. The below grade thing, if they think they can do it, I don't have a problem with making that a condition. And then I think we just need to be a little specific with our language with the leaving out the 2 lots. Are you temporarily leaving them out? Are you removing them from the map? Can we actually do that? I don't know. And then what is the mechanism for actually doing a write-in, write-out or something else? Because you want to make sure that if that's what you're going to have them do, that you also have them ready to pay for it and build it. So that's my point on that.
Okay, Councilmember Friend.
I don't believe that we've ever metered a build-out. I don't believe we can tell somebody, if the markets change and the people become available to build them, that they can't build the homes that they have been given a permit to build. If we give them a permit for 192 homes, they could build them in 6 months if it was possible. And I don't think we have the right to sit up here and tell them, you can't do that. I don't.
Yeah, we did it. We did it one time. Award Homes in their development agreement have a max of 75 units per year.
It seems to me like putting a restriction on like that is not allowing them to build it out. How their planning is going to be, I don't, we're going to have little pieces of it built out and no roads to them or no easy access to it. Then you're going to have another piece built out, and while that's being built, these other people are put out of place. I just don't see how, we're not engineers, I don't think we should do that. That's silly.
So
Councilmember Clark?
my comment on that is that this condition would actually be a better mechanism than everything that the growth management program talked about with the number of units. Because with the growth management program, you can add all these units and then they can build them out as fast as they want. But at least if you have it metered, then you know that it's not going to flood the streets with these impacts all at the same time. And I think that's something that Mr. Richmond has alluded to in the past a number of times, that it's not necessarily the number of allocations you have, but how fast do they turn into people driving and kids going to the schools.
Correct.
So I understand where you're coming from, but I think that if they're open to it, it's definitely something that we should be trying to press for.
Maybe we can hear from the developer if that's what their thoughts are, but the whole purpose is, and thoughts is to deal with the traffic mitigation. We have an unknown entry and exit that by all accounts is going to get started here pretty soon. So this would tie that timing in together so that everything's staggered and you don't have, I think Award Homes is 711 homes if I'm not mistaken. And,
I think it's 566.
Sorry, I was adding the two together. We're
fine.
looking at approximately 800 homes in that region. So if we can stagger it like you guys have already done with Award Homes, I think that's why I was suggesting that would make sense.
Did anybody else want to speak on this at this time?
Does the
Go ahead.
developer want to answer that question?
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
Hellman.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address you again. One of the things that I'm experiencing out in the audience is kind of a death by 1,000 cuts to a certain extent. There are elements that we've been discussing, that you've been discussing, that are going to be totally fine with us. I think metering at 84 units a year is something we can live with. The traffic calming measures on Enterprise, by the way, is already contained in condition number 61.
Only on Mimosa, though. I believe it doesn't extend to Glenview.
To Glenview. I think it's along the entire Enterprise frontage of our project is what it refers, I believe, and Councilman Gillio, I may be wrong.
No, I could be wrong as well. There's
unfortunately,
stack of papers that I read, so I could be wrong too.
Yeah, but I do recall that it was Enterprise, and so we've already accounted for that, so I think that we are already going to be designing to that, subject to the approval of the Community Services Department, Planning and Engineering. Next, with regard to the ride-in, I think you guys have brought up a lot of really good ideas about the problems that can be involved in engineering from the dais, and I would encourage you to allow us to work something out there with staff that may not be quite as concrete as what you're envisioning there. I can't imagine us doing a traffic study and studying it to see if it's feasible, but the other thing you need to consider is subdivisions will typically, and in our case, will build from where you're providing the utilities. And the utilities at Roberts Ranch are generally at the Glenview corner. So we're going to be building the houses from that point out. And so it's going to be quite some time before we're out over to the Fairview Road frontage anyway. So I would ask you to think about giving us a little more flexibility with the Development Services Department to work out those kind of things. But and then when it comes to issues like tightening up the time frames on the multifamily, we can probably work with that, because the honest answer is that we're not going to be practically able to finance or build any of the quarter-acre lots until we've got a definitive plan for building and completing the multifamily units. That's just the reality of what we're going to have to do to finance the project. So as a practical matter, accelerating that triggering event probably changes it by about 90 days. And so it's not a huge issue for us, because regardless of what you do with it on that condition, from the moment we hopefully get an approval, we've got to be working very hard to start those multifamily units, because it frees up a tremendous amount of the value in our project that we won't be available to us otherwise. And so I'm just hoping to lower the the death by 1,000 cuts here to some extent, because every one of them does hurt a little bit, and cumulatively they hurt a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark?
City Attorney Diaz, to his point about the flexibility, how would that look with the possible right in, right out? Because for me, that's the biggest question is if you have conditions, you want the conditions to be as concrete as possible so everybody knows what's expected. But if you're...
You can make the condition subject to being feasible or under a traffic study, for instance.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other?
Oh, I thought the city manager was going to speak. I'm sorry.
Kind of say exactly what Soren said. If you had a condition that basically said if the city engineer or the development services director determines that the Union Road connection isn't going to be made in a timely manner, something along those lines, that you can do something.
Soren, can you maybe drop like 2 sentences or something that explains that better than we're going to be able to, hopefully?
I would defer to the to the city engineer, perhaps, on the particulars.
I have one. Do you want me to read it to you?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
Are we ready?
Go.
If the director of development service determines that Union Road will not be completed by others to extend east from its current terminus near Calistoga Drive and connected to Fairview Road prior to the first move-ins at Robert Ranch, then the subdivider shall construct with its first phase of improvements a temporary ride-in, ride-out vehicle access roadway onto Fairview Road in the vicinity of Roberts Ranch lots 23 and 24. When Union Road is connected to Fairview Road, subdivider shall remove the temporary access roadway if it had been previously constructed and replace it with lots as shown in the vested tentative map, or the tentative map you're looking at. The design of the temporary ride-in, ride-out roadway shall be subject to the approval of the Development Services Director. And my only thing would be is probably the timing of that ride-in, ride-out.
What are your thoughts on the timing?
Well, as Mr. Hammond said, I mean, it could be a good 18 months to 24 months before you ever get up towards that area. If you're building 84 homes a year, you're probably 2 years out before that would be required. And
So about the same time as the multifamily, 160, 165 permits.
Okay. All right.
And I should also say, I mean, as much as Mr. Hellman would love to start construction tomorrow, that's probably not going to happen either,
No.
right? So he has some other mitigation measures that he needs to take care of that can take some time as well.
Okay. All right. So can we come down now to the motion on
It's gonna be a big
resolution?
one. It's going to be a long one.
What's that?
I said it might be a long one.
Yeah. So do we have a motion?
Could you send
That
that
was
to
a long
me?
one.
Could you send that to me?
I will text it to Christy.
Okay.
All right.
So I will make the motion. It's going to take me a minute. I apologize. To approve resolution number 2018-38 with the change to condition number 67 to read, prior to receiving final occupancy of the 165th single-family residential unit in the subdivision, all multiple family housing shall have received final occupancy by the Hollister Building Department. In addition to that, I'd like to add condition, like whatever that last one is. Let's see, what's the last one here? Looks like the last one is 76, so condition number 77, which would be that build out will occur at no faster, or you can't pull more than 7 permits a month. That gives us 84.
84?
Can I make a suggestion and just do 84 a year?
Okay.
84 a year.
Yeah.
Pull 84 permits a year or
Yeah,
final
because
84?
There are some months that are not really great for phone permits.
Okay, so we'll redo that to be that no more than 84 permits will be pulled a year. And then you just do it like a rolling calendar, or? Yeah. Okay. That, and then it would be condition number 78, that the lots backing up to Cielo Vista be at least 18 inches below the current grade of the Cielo Vista lots behind them. If approved by soils and drainage engineers. Condition number 79, which would state that developer will set aside $130,000 for a traffic calming measures along the Enterprise corridor. Okay, condition number 80, which would be the language that City Manager Avra read out. Right. And what was the last part? With the timing of that being complete at the 165th unit, if necessary, right? Necessary. Okay. I think that is all of it.
And that's the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. I'll second.
There's a second. We have a second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. 3-1. Thank you. All right, going on to Resolution 2018-39. Okay.
Yes.
So,
for the conditional use permit for a plan unit development, essentially to allow flexibility in the R1 to allow for the multifamily component.
okay. Are there any comments from City Council? Okay.
I'm just, the conditional use permit is only to state that they build, or that they add the multifamily units.
To allow for the multifamily units, it calls out for the setbacks, lot coverage, and so forth. For the multifamily units, that's correct. And I do want to add that there is a condition that indicates that all other conditions on the other approved resolutions for the entitlements of this project also apply. So yes, the tentative map resolution, there's a condition that indicates that the conditional use permit resolution and Saturn architectural resolution applies, and vice versa with the others.
Okay. Any other comments from City Council? Hearing none. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 2018-39.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm a nay.
1 nay. Motion carries. Going on to Resolution 2018-40.
This is, Madam Vice Mayor, this is for the site and architectural review of the subdivision, especially, just particularly to the multifamily component. Site and architectural is not required for the single-family homes. It is only required for the multifamily component on this project. So yes.
Okay. Any comments? Yeah. Councilmember Clower.
Just a comment on the language used in part of this area of the part of this resolution.
Sure.
In some places, instead of duplex, the word duet is used.
Okay.
They have very different meanings, and based off of the map that was just approved, they're duplexes. But just moving forward, I think we need to come up with definitions so that everybody knows exactly what the different type of housing is. Absolutely. So that we don't make any mistakes and then allow somebody to do something that we weren't hoping that they would do.
Absolutely.
So that's not really about this particularly, but just in general.
Point taken.
Okay, any
Thank
other
you.
comments? No. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve Resolution 2018-40.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, it's been moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm sorry, I'm a nay. Sorry, nay.
Okay, unanimous?
Sorry.
Motion
It's
passes.
the same.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Being that we're on the same subject, I'd like to request from City Council if we could move F3 to the next, actually, next action. All right. We need a motion for that.
So moved.
Frank?
Second.
All right. Moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. We'll move on to the urgency. Let's see.
41.
Yeah. Okay. Resolution 2018-41.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor Luna. This is the reimbursement agreement portion of the Roberts Ranch proposal. Essentially, as touched upon on the previous presentation, the applicant is seeking for a reimbursement agreement approval by the City Council. Essentially, threefold. One is for the Quimby fee land acquisition impact fees. Another is for the construction of the park. And the other is for the prorated share of the signal at Enterprise and Airline Highway State Route 25. We can briefly start with the Quimby Act land acquisition. The as indicated on the slide before you, Section 1655.040 of the Hollister Municipal Code requires that there's a park standard for the City of Hollister that there should be at minimum there's 4 acres per 1,000 persons. Right now, there's a draft master plan that's being reviewed by the City of Hollister for the parks. But as it stands right now, the requirement is 4 acres per every 1,000 persons in the City of Hollister. So simply by dividing 4 into 1,000, that's 0.004 acres per person. So the census has the persons per household at approximately 3.52 persons per household. So 3.52 at 0.004 basically requires 0.014 acres per household, per single family home. Essentially 613 square feet of dedicated parkland per house is what the city Section 1655 requires of the Hollister Municipal Code. There should be a dedication of parkland at approximately 613 square feet of open space per every house built in the City of Hollister. Multifamily is a little different. It's 3.45 persons per household, not that much. So that's more at 601 square feet per multifamily unit. So based on the 192 single-family homes that this development is proposing, and based on the 35 multifamily homes that this development is proposing, the total park area required for this development is 3.18 acres on the site. And so with the 2.53 acres that they're proposing for the expansion of Valley View Park, and with the 0.79 acres that they're proposing for the linear park between the Valley View Park and along Mimosa to the north, they're proposing 3.32 acres. So it meets and exceeds the minimum requirement that the City of Hollister has. And so because they're dedicating it on site, they're asking for impact fee credit on the dedication part of it on this case, because they're providing the park. They're meeting the minimum requirements and exceeding them on site, as opposed to us collecting that in lieu fee and providing the park elsewhere. So therefore, staff recommends that the Quimby land acquisition park impact fees be credited in the amount of the for the developer. I just want to be clear that they're not being waived; they're just being credited because they are providing the park land on site. Instead of not providing any park, paying the fees for the city to look elsewhere. So that's on the Quimby. The other one is regarding the construction of the park. The construction for the single family residential if they were not going to construct the park, then the city would require at 192 single-family residential units, as indicated on the site, at the current rate of the impact fees, would require $537,553.92 to be provided for the city to look elsewhere to build a park. And for the multifamily component at 35, it would require $96,070.10 for a total of $633,624 for the city if they were not going to do park improvements on site, for the city to collect that money and improve elsewhere. Because they are improving it on site, again, we are requesting, the applicant is requesting that the applicant receives impact fee credit. Again, they're not waiving it, just credit for them to build on site based on the $633,000 that were going to be required of them. In addition to that, as part of your packet, they actually did an estimate of how much the improvements of the park would be, the improvements of the 2.5 acre park and the linear park. Their improvement estimate at this point is at about $1.2 million. So it's above and beyond the $633 that would cost for the impact fees. And so what they're asking for is upon Parks and Recreation Commission of the improvements, that was just an estimate of $1.2 million. So depending on what the Parks and Rec decides on what kind of improvements they want to see at that extension, it can certainly be 1.2 million. It may be a little less, it may be a little more. So what the applicant is requesting that in addition to the impact fee credit, that any amount above the $633,624.02, that amount be split 50-50 between the city and the applicant. And the applicant would want to be capped at no more than $400,000. And of course, the city's half would be paid through impact fees received from other projects, such as, for example, when Award Homes develops, or any impact fees that we already have for development impact fees for park. So essentially, this request for park construction is to credit, not waive, but credit their construction impact fees because they're constructing it on site, and any amount above and beyond their fair share of impact fees for the construction, go in at half and half, half between that the city would pay and half that the developer would pay, but the developer would be capped at $400,000, and that would serve as just to make sure that the Parks and Rec Commission provide a improvements on the park that are not, above and beyond as well, that they're measured, appropriately. So that's in regards to the construction part of it. And finally, the prorated share of traffic impact fees. Essentially, the estimate of the signalization is at $381,000 for Enterprise and Airline Highway. Prior to the first building permit, the applicant is going to have to do a traffic study and a prorated share would be determined for their development. And so essentially what they're asking for is a reimbursement of their prorated share for the installation, because they're actually going to be installing the signalization of the at Enterprise and Airline Highway pending Caltrans approval. So with that, staff recommends that the City Council of the City of Hollister adopts the resolution approving the Roberts Ranch reimbursement agreement. Are there any questions for staff?
Okay, any question? Yes, Councilman Gilio?
Yeah, does staff, did you assess the estimate to build out the park, and do you agree with the value that has been placed on the process to improve the park?
That's correct, Councilman Gilio. The city did assess the estimate that was provided, and we agree for the most part. There are some items that we recently looked at that actually were part of a different agreement that was made between the council and some of the improvements that are already going to be made or were already agreed upon by the council. So that may be a little lower. That 1.2 million improvement estimate may be a little lower, based on what the estimate that they provided the city.
You don't
But-
feel that it'll exceed the estimate is the important part.
Correct. However, that would be contingent on Planning, Parks and Rec Commission, which I think at that time when it gets to that point, we would just make sure that we work with them to consider something that does not exceed that 1.2 million.
Okay. Any other comments? City Council? If not,
I do
we
have a speaker card.
Yeah, public speaker? Okay.
Yes. Marty Richmond?
In general, Marty Richmond from Hollis. In general, I have no problem with the traffic light issue. I wish the development department would have just an estimate of what that could be. I understand we haven't done the official study, but what is it? Is it half? I mean, how much are we going to have to be juggling around? I do have problems with the park issue. Could you flip the park back, please? Thank you. And it's no, forward again with the pricing. Thank you. I'll tell you a story, and the story speaks for itself. Santana Ranch, across the street over there by Fairview, that land was worth almost nothing. The county gave them permission to develop. All of a sudden, the land was worth a fortune. Part of the development agreement was that they would provide a school site. And when it came down to paying for the school site, they said, oh, that land's worth a fortune now. That's what we want for your school site. Well, the truth of the matter is that park land there, without the houses, is worth almost nothing. And therefore, I don't want to pay what they would pay if they had houses on it. That's not fair, number one. Number two is, one of the reasons we even take these developments is so the city does not have to pay the public price of building parks. So the fact that the developer can build it cheaper, I want to make sure that's what we pay for it, what he paid for it to build it, not what the government would have paid to build it. So saying that's our impact fees, the reason the impact fees are so high is because that's what it costs us to build it, and I don't think anybody in the world can build it as expensively as a public facility in California. We hold the record for overcharging for everything. So therefore, we appreciate the fact that he's going to not spend that much money. And so therefore, I think that is the price of doing business in Hollister. I've said that 100 times. It's not the first time you heard that from me. You come here, you got a piece of land, you want that's maybe worth $1,000 an acre with no permission to do anything with it, and we're going to make it worth $175,000 or more. And gee, we would like our money back for building the park. I'm sorry. We appreciate the donation. That's my opinion. And that's what we should say. If you want to do this business, we'll take the park, we'll take the improvements, because you're going to use it to bounce up the price of your home. And you can do a better job than we can, and you won't have to wait for us to put the park in. That's another advantage they have. If they give us the impact fees, they won't be able to tell the future buyers, oh, you get a park here, because we won't get around to building it for 10 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
There are no more speakers.
All right.
He's raising his hand out there.
Bring it back to council level.
The applicant is willing to speak if it's a desire of the
Do you
council.
have somebody else? All right. Welcome back.
Jeez. Actually, Marty asked me to come up just so I wouldn't kill him out in the audience. My name again is Peter Hellman. I'm the one of the general partners of the Hollister Enterprise, the applicant. I'd like to try to explain this very succinctly. You charge park in lieu fees, park dedication fees, because most projects don't include parks. Probably wouldn't be fair to have somebody provide a park and also pay the fee, because the guy next door wouldn't have to provide the park, but he would have to provide the fee. Same holds true for the park construction fee. The park construction fee is intended to represent the developer's fair share of what it costs to build park improvements. So those developers that don't include parks in their projects are contributing to a fund that's going to help the city build parks elsewhere. So that's why, the perfect way to disincentivize a developer from providing parks or developing parks is to not provide reimbursement for those fees, because it's going to be much easier to pay the fees. Why would I want to dedicate the land and have to pay for it too? That doesn't make any sense. As far as the 50-50 split of the excessive costs, I'd like to touch on that for just a minute. The park cost estimate that you've seen is based on the park plan that we submitted, which was based on the park plan that the Park and Recreation Commission approved sometime back in the early 2000s. I want to say it was like 2004. So we took that plan, which at the time was what we assumed was what the city would want there. And that's what we based all of these calculations on. Now, those costs include some things that are not necessarily typical in every park. There's a turf fields, and importantly, there's an irrigation system that's very expensive to support those turf fields. And there's concrete paths that are going to provide the load support for the maintenance vehicles that have to go out there and do all that stuff. So it's not an inexpensive park. And yet, at the end of the day, the improvements that will be required of the park are going to be determined by the Park and Recreation Commission. And Robert Trant wants the finest community neighborhood park that we can provide in Hollister, period, end sentence. We don't want to do Disneyland. We want to leave it a little bit short of Disneyland. So we think that it's fair that both parties share in the costs, so both parties have a stake in the outcome. And we're saying by this proposal that we're willing to fund up to $400,000. So Marty does get a $400,000 pound of flesh out of us, which is over and above what we would be providing if we weren't building a park in the project at all. And the important thing at the end of the day that I think is really important for the council to focus on is this park, this linear park, and was all created out of the West of Fairview specific plan. And you had the developer of the Valley View Estates. Bottom line here is that between the Award Homes project and the Roberts Ranch project, after all the dust settles and all these deals are done, there'll be a net contribution of over $3.4 million to the city's park acquisition and park construction fee accounts, period, end sentence. So you're going to get a fully improved park, a fully improved linear park. You're going to get a park and a linear park that is maintained by our homeowners, and you're going to get $3.4 million deposited in these fund accounts to spend elsewhere in the state. I think it's a definition of a pretty good deal. I'm going to sit here and keep talking so you don't close a public hearing. No, anyway, that's all I got. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would of course be happy to answer them. Thank you.
We'll bring it back. Yes, Councilmember Clower.
Yeah, it's not a question, so don't worry. No, I understand where Marty's coming from, but at the same time, I think we've collected a lot of park acquisition fees, and I don't think that we've ever actually acquired a park since I've been on. And I understand that the city, by making the approval on the map, is making it that part not worth anything because it's a park now. But if we were to take those park acquisition fees and go somewhere else, we're not going to get the same deal because they're going to say, hey, this isn't zoned for a park. So in this case, at least we get a park, first of all, finished off. It looks like we're going to get probably more than enough in the park construction fees. And we're not building new parks with our fees that we've been collecting anyways. I probably shouldn't say this, but we're using those fees and we're redoing the old parks that we already have. So I understand where that point's coming from, but we're not putting the funds that we have to good enough use to where it would offset us taking this money and going somewhere else and trying to put it in ourselves. This is not going to work.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Quick question for staff. Can you reiterate for the group here what is the trigger for the park and when the park has to be done And
Absolutely.
what's to prevent the developer from building some houses and just maybe not doing the park if the economy changes?
Absolutely, Councilman Gilio. On the tentative map, there's a condition of approval that requires that the park be dedicated and improved prior to the 145th building permit for the subdivision. So at that point, the 146th building permit or 145th cannot be issued until the park is dedicated and fully improved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comment?
I think we ought to name the park Marty Richmond Park.
That has a process also. All right, we'll move on. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Moved. Do we have a second? All right, we have motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we take 5 minutes?
We'll take a 5-minute break, and it's 5 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Where we're going back to F1? Well, and every
Get back to our agenda. Under F1, urgency ordinance, 1152.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Luna and council members. What we have before you is an urgency ordinance 1152 and a regular ordinance 1153 regarding the reauthorization of the funding of PEG fees by state franchise holders that provide video services here in Hollister. We received notice that one of the state franchise holders were expiring as of January. Those Charter Communications or Charter Spectrum, and once the state franchise is a 10-year franchise, and they applied with the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, to renew. And once the expiration goes through, the funding of the PEG fees that are required, the cities are required to reauthorize the collection and funding from the state franchise payments to the city. And so we kind of found out late last week that Charter had their franchise expire, and then they also renewed. And they were giving the cities within the first quarter of this year to reauthorize those collection of the PEG fees. And so, seeing that the ordinance has a first reading, second reading, it's got to be done within 30 days before it goes into effect, we'd be over that first quarter. And then we'd lose we'd have a gap in funding for the PEG fees if we didn't do this urgency, and also the second ordinance.
So the urgency ordinance would be like for a certain amount of time?
I believe it either starts immediately or within 15 days.
It's immediately and lasts for a period of up to 45 days.
Up to 45.
Which
Okay.
allows the second ordinance to go into effect.
Okay. All
That way
right.
we don't lose the actual funding during that time
All
from
right.
Charter.
Okay. All right. Any questions from City Council?
The concern I have is that we somehow ensure that that doesn't happen in the future, so we don't lose a bunch of funds.
Inside the ordinance, and we're not the only city. We were notified by Charter, but so was San Juan Bautista, San Miguel County. We all kind of fell in where we just were notified.
Okay.
And we kind of worked together to get our ordinances to come before council. And inside those ordinances basically says that, when a state franchise expires, we'll automatically reauthorize without having to come every time the state.
Perfect. I just don't want to lose
Okay.
out on any money. That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. So.
All right.
So for this matter, you're going to have two motions. For the first one, because it's an urgency ordinance, you're going to need a 4/5 vote. So that means that all four of you would have to agree to adopt the urgency ordinance if that's your desire.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments, City Council? If not,
I'll make a motion that we approve emergency ordinance 1152.
as it has been moved, do we have a second?
Was there public comment?
Second.
It's been second?
Was there public comment?
There's no.
Emergency ordinance?
It's an urgency.
So there's no
motion?
public comment on it?
We have no speaker cards.
You can have public comment on it.
We can have public comment, but we have no speaker
You
cards.
don't have no speaker card, okay. It's been moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Jim,
Okay.
you seconded?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. 4. Thank you. It's passed. And
I'll make a
ordinance
motion.
1153.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 1153
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
very much.
Sure. Okay. Moving on to item number 2.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Luna. This item before you is the second reading of the amendment to the cannabis ordinance. There has been no substantial changes to what the council saw at their last meeting, with the exception of a couple of spelling errors and a wrong word of I had in a section about disposition as it related to really distribution. So that's been fixed. With that, if you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, staff recommends read by title only, waive full reading, and adopt ordinance 1149.
Okay. Any comments from City Council? If not, do we have a motion?
Do you have speaker cards?
Any speaker?
No.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance and waive full reading and adopt ordinance 1149.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Motion carries.
You guys sat here all night for 5 minutes of glory and you didn't take it.
Okay, moving on to the agenda item. G, reports on City Council officers, boards, and committees.
Oh, no, we have
Item
F4.
Oh, item number 4.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's
I
okay.
skipped over that. Resolution 2018-42.
Good evening. This next item is requesting the initiation of pre-zoning of a parcel located south of Santa Ana Road and Meridian. And if I may, Christine, the presentation.
I'm so sorry.
I have a question of the city attorney.
At this time?
Yeah, before we go on.
Okay, before we move on, Councilmember Friend would like to ask a question of the city attorney.
I live on the corner of Santa Ana and Falcone. Do I have a conflict of interest with this?
If you do you live within 300 feet of the proposed pre-zoning?
So. I don't believe so.
Then you're fine.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so essentially, this is just requesting the initiation of pre-zoning to pre-zone a parcel that is located between Santa Ana Road and Meridian, as you could see on the map. This parcel is roughly 23.485 acres. Is within the county of San Benito. As you could see, this parcel is bounded by a city on the west, east, and south. Even though it's within the county, it is within the sphere of influence, and it is within the planning area, and it's also a priority infield area as well. The general plan has this parcel designated as medium density, which allows for 8 to 12 units per net acre, and that will be after the pre-zoning. I wanted to go over on this next slide. This is just a conceptual plan. We're not here to discuss the plan itself. It's just for the initiation of pre-zoning so that we could move forward with the CEQA documents and essentially with the pre-zoning as well. But this is just for you guys, for the council to be able to see a conceptual plan of the parcel.
No park.
What's that major road name?
Meridian. Memorial, excuse me.
Thank you.
And that concludes the presentation. Are there questions for staff?
Any questions from council? Yes. Councilmember Galileo?
I just want to make a couple comments, maybe perhaps not a question. I think it's way too early to talk about this, but I've been working with the school district and the neighbors in that area there, specifically east of the project. Because what happens is the school directs the traffic out after the pickup onto Santa Ana. Everybody is forced to make a right-hand turn by the school district, and they go up and they make an illegal U-turn at different intersections on the Santa Ana corridor, and it's causing traffic hazards and problems and pedestrian hazards and problems. So potentially, I would like to see us work to the future of having some sort of access to Memorial from the school. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's an actual road that goes from the school to Memorial. Council member Clower, actually, I had heard him mention potentially a traffic circle at Santa Ana and Memorial, which, that seemed to make sense. I don't want to steal his daughter's idea. That seemed to make sense as well. So I hope that there's some thought that we can do and move forward as we do move forward on this project to alleviate that hazard going out onto Santa Ana.
And definitely, like I said, this is just the initiation of pre-zoning. Once we move forward, we'll have a traffic study that will show if there's any significant impacts and how to mitigate those as well.
Well, and just to make a comment, and I agree with him because I travel on that road quite a bit. And a traffic circle, although I hate them, would be appropriate at Memorial in Santa Ana, because then the people that come out of the school would be able to make that loop and go right back down Santa Ana Road.
There's already a traffic circle on Santa Ana. It's just at Kane Drive, and it's not marked. So
well, it
exists. The people are doing it, and they're not paying attention. So I think everybody thinks it's probably a good idea, and I know for us, we don't usually see these things until they've already gone through engineering, they've been approved by Planning Commission. So it's not the right time to talk about it, but it's kind of the right time to talk about it. And I personally think that would be better than having access directly from the school onto Memorial, because then you still have people making left-hand turns to get where they need to go. Because a lot of them are going back. A lot of them are going to go back west on Santa Ana, no matter what, even if this road gets put in. That's just where they live. That's where they could go home. So it's not the right time.
That's essentially something we'll bring up when we do the traffic study as well.
Well, the other concern I would have is the other half of that of Santa Ana is still in the county. So a traffic circle would obviously encroach on the county's property or that farmland that's right there. So it's going to be a task to get that developed, I guess, or whatever. And there's a house right there too.
Okay, so the action you are actually just seeking tonight would be approving the initiation of pre-zoning application.
Correct.
Correct? Any other comments from City Council? Do we have any speakers?
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor. Doug Liedeboer.
Madam Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm Doug Liedeboer with Highland Partners Group. Just want to thank Christian for the nice overview. I'm essentially here to answer questions. I do want to emphasize the fact that this is a priority infill parcel surrounded on three sides by city limits. But probably more importantly is if and when this property is ever developed, it will provide for a critical connection, extension of Memorial from Meridian to Santa Ana. And we certainly will take all the suggestions that you have to offer as far as the traffic circles and things like that. The conceptual site plan was very, very preliminary, needs a lot of fine-tuning. But I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speaker?
There are no more speaker cards, Madam Mayor. Vice Mayor.
Right. We'll bring it back to our council level. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Nay? Oh, motion carries.
Thank you.
It was all aye. Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll go on to reports. Item G, reports on City Council officers, boards, and committee. Number 1, City Council members on committees or reports on, and then we'll go on to reports on ad hoc. We'll start with Council Member Clower.
I do not have any meetings.
None? Okay. Council Member Friend?
I didn't have any readings, and the reason the Fire Commission was postponed is we were waiting on this draft report that we now have. So
okay,
I'll have a big report on the next one.
All right. Councilmember Gilio?
Yeah, one committee to report on, which is COG. So we've had a few COG meetings since our last meeting. We've had community outreach on Saturday, and we've also had, just this past Thursday, another COG meeting, and we've scheduled another community outreach meeting to discuss the proposal of a tax measure to work on our local roads and also potentially roads such as Highway 25, Union Road, Fairview Road, a lot of the roads that Mr. Richmond had mentioned. That project is going along well. I guess I would say I'm a little disappointed that we're so far along, so close to the election coming up in November, that we're not farther along. There is going to be a community survey soon via a web and also phone to talk about and see if the support's out there and to which way we should structure the language so that the folks on the in the community feel comfortable and confident with the project list. One of the big concerns that I keep hearing over and over with Measure P was that there was a lot of Board of Equalization language kind of scattered throughout the entire proposal. So one of the thoughts is to kind of include that into one section. Another thought is that we had to have a very clear, distinct public accountability section. Essentially, it's delineated, separated. This is what how we're going to hold our public officials accountable to spending this money as we want them to spend it, and such things as a public committee, all these different things, as well as a very specific project list. So there are a lot of good comments and thoughts being made. I just think we're getting very close to the deadline, because I think this has to be back to the county by July with the final language, and then it would ultimately come to this board for approval, and then it has to obviously go back to the elections department in August or September. So timing's coming up quickly. If you guys have any suggestions as council folks, I would really like to hear them so I can bring them back to the COG board.
Okay. Thank you. I would just like to report that I attended the Area Agency on Aging on February 14th at the Watsonville Community Center. And just so happened on the same day, I had to be in AMBAG that evening. That was at the Marina Community Library. So those were the two different meetings that I attended. So we'll go on to informational reports from City Council, City Manager, City Attorney, and Chief of Police. We'll begin with Council Member Clower.
Last year we had a goals session as a council. I'd like to take a look at possibly doing that again and maybe doing it a little earlier in the calendar year than we did last year, so that whatever the proposed goals are by the council, that we can get those rolled into the budget that will eventually be looked at, so that the budget actually reflects what the goals are. So I don't know if that's next month, if that's early April, but that's something that I think would be
Are you
beneficial.
seeking for a Saturday or an evening on an off day? I'm available every single weekend in March. I don't. Christine is too. I think most of the department head. I'm not aware of any department heads being gone. So if you want to just let me know when the council would like to, or we can try to set a date right now if you'd like.
I know I'm at a conference on March the 23rd, I think, and 24th in Sacramento.
I personally would prefer an evening.
An evening one?
Evening.
Family, but if not, I can make something work.
Like Friday night, because you're not doing nothing anyway?
Yeah, I will be here.
What about the off Monday? The 12th?
March 12th? Okay.
Would you like to do it in this room, or do you want to go to another site? We usually do it at the Vets Hall.
We could do it at Payne's.
Payne's?
I think a different site would be nice. Maybe one where we can look at each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Need to check
kinda
the
weird, but-
availability of that room.
Okay.
We're tired of the Vets Hall. We'll do something else.
All right.
Huh? Okay.
So you're set for March 12th?
March 12th.
What time?
2 o'clock.
Early? All right.
6?
6? Okay.
6. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Councilmember
6 p.m. Do you think that's going to be enough time?
Councilmember Friend?
I just have one
Report.
thing to report out. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And that's anybody that's interested in the Monterey Bay Alternative Power Group that we are voting members on, and members of the board and members of the work committee. The director of that group and his assistant will be here Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to go over the latest in the state regulations that have been passed on how these new entities are going to fit into the grid and fit into the CPU's time work. So if you're interested in finding out anything about that Monterey Bay Power Alternative Power Group, might be an interesting session.
That was here,
Okay.
Councilmember?
Here at 2 o'clock Thursday.
Here means City Hall?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Gilead?
I don't have anything to report.
All right. My report is that I attended the Cannabis Advisory Subcommittee sessions in Sacramento on Tuesday, February 13th. Quite interesting. There was just every session, and I think in every room there was standing room only, and it was open to the public. So people, elected officials were there, and the public. It was very interesting to actually be there and hear, including young adults from the college university that were there. We had concerns. So anyway, and then my district too, I called a meeting with all the commissioners that actually represent me, and they were all together, and we met at the community center on Wednesday, February the 7th, and I found that to be very interesting, and they're very much aware of everything that we do ourselves, but in hearing them speaking about the commissions that they serve and they represent us was extremely interesting, and I'm hoping that from these commissioners that we can encourage and build up our leadership base in the city of Hollister, where someday they'll be encouraged to run where our office is. So I also attended the memorial service for Tony Reese at San Juan Oaks. It was very well attended. A lot of people that I know I have not seen in many years were there, paying tribute to this one person that actually at one time was the political arm of this city. And so there was a lot of commentaries made. It was a beautiful memorial service. So, all right, and city manager?
Thank you. Just a couple quick things. West Hills Water Treatment Plant. We have a grand opening on Saturday, March 3rd. Elected officials are available to go on a tour at 9 o'clock or 9 to 10 that morning. The general public is open from 10 to 12. I know that there's some different times out there, but I think that we've landed on 10 to 12 on that particular day. We'll have tours and everything up there, so anybody can go walk around and kind of see what's going on. It's been up and operating. I hope that everybody has noticed a little bit of a difference in the quality of their water. I actually did, and I live in the worst spot in town to get it. So those folks that are close to the wells should be getting some really decent water right now. Also, the County of San Benito, the City of San Juan Bautista, along with the City of Hollister, we've been a part of the Integrated Waste Management Regional Agency since 1995. It's a joint powers authority that was created to cost-effectively coordinate all integrated waste management programs within the requirements of state laws. The agency issued a request for proposal for private companies for the franchise of solid waste collection back in August of 2017. The goal was to select a company as quickly as possible. I just want to let everybody know that the current franchise ends on June 30th of this year, but the ad hoc committee is getting together to review those proposals. I believe within the next few weeks. I know there's some scheduling things with some of the folks, but I just want to let you know that you will be seeing that here relatively shortly, and it's a pretty big deal. So, also. I would encourage you, maybe now we'll be able to talk a little bit about it at our meeting on March 12th. If the council can take a quick drive down around the area of Nash, Powell, D Street, Suter Street, in that area, you'll notice that it was a former county island. There's not a lot of the infrastructure there that our normal city streets have. In fact, Suter Street, at least the first, I think, 200 to 300 feet of Suter Street north of D actually belongs to the city, and it's in horrible condition. I talked to Mary Paxton, and she said that it's likely to be eligible for CDBG and program income type of projects. So that might be one that I'd like to get council consensus on, is maybe doing some design work for curb gutter sidewalks, fix some of the things down there, and then also the street on Suter. It's probably a several-year project, but at least getting it on the books might help. Same thing with the alleys. I've had some requests to fix some alley areas downtown and in some residential areas. So again, maybe on the 12th we can talk about how high of a priority those particular areas are, and start to get those worked on. With that concludes my report.
I have a question regarding the treatment plant open house.
Sure.
Is there going to be some kind of transportation up the hill?
Up the hill?
Because, I mean, if everybody starts driving up there, it's going to be...
There's a lot of
Yeah, I get to be a parking guy, so... Yeah, we'll be most of us will be parking over by the pond. And then for those folks that have difficulty walking, we've got some areas set aside right by the administration building so that they'll be able to stay up there and park, but most people will be parking out by the ponds.
Okay, so
Yeah.
everybody who drives their vehicle is going to go up.
Yeah, everybody
up
that
the
drives
hill
will be there.
themselves. Okay.
I really, really do encourage ladies to wear closed-toed shoes when going up there, because as you know, on the treatment,
Right.
on the tower itself, it's a grate, and that could be very dangerous if you wanted to go up there and take a look at how it actually works. So
Okay.
That's my only request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney Diaz?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Captain Carlos Reynoso?
I have nothing to report.
Nothing to report. All right. Okay. City Clerk?
I just have two things. I'm not sure if I can actually do this. Can I do the Clayley? Advertise the Clayley? I don't know if you remember Clayley. He was our Public Works Director for many years. They're doing a barbecue, and I believe Cheryl Mullen has tickets that are available. It's like $25. It's a whole chicken, bread, and I think salad. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's a meal for $25. And,
When is that?
March. It's March.
I think the 13th. I bought a ticket out.
Yeah, I think it's
13th?
March 13th. And I think we have until this Friday, I think, is the deadline to purchase. So if you can purchase those through Cheryl, that would be awesome. And then I don't know if you're aware that tomorrow at Payne's, there's going to be a San Benito County Chamber of Commerce lunch and learn. And the city manager will be speaking on the state of the city. So I just thought it would be.
Thank you. All right. Then moving on. Yeah, he reported. Okay, moving on to, we don't have H, unfinished business.
Move for adjournment.
No, we have a report. We have a
No,
report.
we have K.
New business, nothing. J, miscellaneous, nothing. K, City of Hollister Successor Housing Agency, report.
Oh,
The last item. Good evening, Council and Vice Mayor Luna. Again, my name is Jamila Saka, and I'm the Housing Programs Coordinator. Tonight, we will be discussing the annual report on the Hollister Successor Agency Low and Moderate Income Housing Asset Fund for fiscal year 2016 and 2017. My error there in the report, it does show 2014 and 2015. So this
Billy?
report. Oh.
Billy, will you give her the?
It's
Okay,
here.
all right, okay, good.
Yeah, thank you. I saw it. I'm not there yet. This report summarizes the financial condition of the City of Hollister Housing Successor Low and Moderate Income Housing Asset Fund, and the audit of the fund as required by Health and Safety Code Section 34176.1F. So I just have a little short presentation just to kind of pull out some of the major points of the report for everyone to see. So the first section just discusses the fund's expenditures. So for this fiscal year, we did have $100,544 that were used for monitoring and preservation of our low-end income funding homes. So you can just see that on the top portion where the others are listed as 0. The next portion is just our deposits. So we do have a deposit of $101,619 from a repayment of loan that we do receive annually. And then next is just some of the projects that were completed during that fiscal year with the funds. One of the projects was the Rustic Gardens rehabilitation of 19 units. The other project, or now future project, is the Senior Sunrise Affordable Apartments, which 48 units will be for affordable rental units. And so at this time with those 2 projects, we are on track to meet our development requirements and on track to be using the funds accurately as well. So at this time, at the beginning of the fiscal year, we did have a balance of $2,412,829. We have ended the year at $2,413,904. That did leave us with a surplus of $1,413,904. At this time, we have committed to assist CHISPA for the Senior Sunrise Affordable Apartment Project of $1 million. So that will leave us now with the surplus projected for this coming year of $413,904. It is just an important note to make that we must not have an excess surplus by 2018-2019 fiscal year. So where that surplus shows, it will need to be at 0 at that time. So at this time, staff just recommends that the City Council accept the annual report of the Low Moderate Income Housing Asset Fund by consent and direct staff to post it on the city's website. This report will also be included in the City of Hollister's annual general plan progress report. Okay. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I hate to ask a question this late, but you said we'd have an excess of $14,000.
$413,904.
That's at the end of 2017. So
That's would be current, projecting that we are taking out the $1 million for the CHISPA Senior Sunrise Project, which we've already committed to.
We're going to have income in 2018.
Yes.
And you said we had to be zeroed out by the end of 2018.
Yes, at that point, if we have an excess, the funds do get given back to the Community Development Department. So we kind of have to basically forego some of the funds that were previously in the account. If we have an excess surplus at that time. So it's kind of like if we don't use it, we may not be able to use it at that time after that fiscal year is over.
It's part of the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. That's sort of what they decided that they were going to do, is that if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So that they've changed their legislation so that we commit those funds. So do they have to be spent or committed?
That part I'm not sure. Okay, they do have to be spent.
Yeah.
We could re-roof the senior center with that.
There are some restrictions with it, but if you guys have any ideas or ways that you have for our staff to direct the funds, we can definitely take that in consideration. I'll make a note.
Okay.
Casino invested.
Any other comments from City Council? Yes. Councilman Clower?
If we got to that point and we had, say, $500,000, would we be able to purchase more years on the deed restriction on some of the units? Is that something that we could look at?
Let me write that down because truthfully, I'm not sure unless there's staff here that might know more information, which Mary might have the experience on.
You could, but they couldn't be for senior because there's a cap on our senior expenditures, and with this Sunrise Apartments, we'll be within the cap, but it would probably tip over. So we probably, right now, we have an annual subsidy to the Prospect Villa. We probably couldn't extend that, but we could do it for some other project. It could also be used for homeless prevention or for transitional housing with rapid rehousing services.
Okay, because I think that would be probably a good backup plan, because a lot of the stuff that we've done, if we have to spend it, you never know when it's actually going to get built.
Yeah.
So we could end up with a lot more than $500,000 if that project doesn't start cruising. The Line Street West Side.
I think it should be going
Yeah, that one we are finalizing the loan agreements for the next council meeting. So we should see all that information coming to in the springtime.
But if we finalize the loan agreement and then for some reason their other financing doesn't happen, then
That's
we could
true.
still
Then
end
we're
up getting
now
it back.
left with that money. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other comments?
Real quick.
Yes.
Question, sorry.
Councilmember Gilio?
Sorry, it got so late. It's getting so late, but somebody, I think Mary just mentioned that we could potentially use this for some homeless items. And I was wondering, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
I was just going to say, I was wondering if there's any chance that we can, instead of using the general fund money that we're going to use for the other homeless commitment to the shelter, to use this.
Between the two of us, that's something that we've discussed looking into, that in the future, potentially that could be something that instead of pulling from that general account for that department, that we could use potentially these funds.
Can
That's
we
something-
reimburse ourselves? I don't even know if we've spent it yet, and then can we use this money now?
That part I'm not sure about.
Just
I'm
maybe we
not
could
sure
look
if
at it. That'd
the
be
city
great.
manager might have more information.
We'll always look into whether or not something can be reimbursed. In
Okay.
addition to that, one of the other sort of backup plans is that as part of the homeless shelter, I think Health and Human Services is looking at a portion of the back part of the building to be a truly transitional housing type of facility, which probably fits in relatively well with some of this. So we can maybe offset some of our annual requests from them to actually do and help them on the say the front end of the actual transitional housing part. So there might be some ways we can help them and not necessarily dip into our general fund on other things.
Good.
But we're a long way from that right now. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Very informative. But before we go ahead.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we adjourn, I would just like to thank everybody for coping with me tonight. I didn't know I was going to run this meeting until 2 hours prior to the meeting, but thank you very much for that. And Councilmember Jim Gilio, you wanted to
Yeah, I
adjourn?
wanted to adjourn in the memory of Alexander, also known as Alex Mark Motto, Mottaau, for the clerk. Alexander is a 27-year-old young man who his family is from Hollister, and he's obviously born and raised in Hollister as well. There was a beautiful memorial service this past week at Sacred Heart, and I just wanted to pass along our condolences and adjourn in his memory.
Okay, so noted. All right. We have a second to that motion?
Second.
That was your motion, right?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Good night.
We're out of here 2 hours.